I think that the morphs probably are the root of most of our problems and most of the shittiest aspects of this hobby. Those toxic, I hate using the word toxic because I hate using buzzwords, but the most toxic aspects of our hobby all emanate from that.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Cold-Blooded Caffeine, a small batch coffee company built around reptiles, conservation, and really good coffee. Founded by Trey Hall and McKendrick Dunn, Cold-Blooded Caffeine connects roasted to order coffee with real-life conservation in coffee-producing countries. 5% of every bag sold goes directly to conservation efforts, and I'm excited to announce that the Expert and the Idiot podcast now has its own custom coffee blend. Every penny from my profits from that blend will be donated to indigo conservation through the Orient Society. If you want great coffee that actually supports the animals and ecosystems we all care about, check out coldbloodedcaffeine.com. This episode is brought to you in part by Exoterra. If you're as passionate about reptiles and amphibians as I am, you know that quality matters. I use Exoterra products on all my reptile and amphibian enclosures, which is why I'm excited to be partnering with them. From naturalistic decor to innovative lighting and enclosures of all sizes, Exoterra has everything you need for your cold-blooded companions. Exoterra, make your reptiles feel at home. This episode is brought to you in part by Unlimited Exotic Pets. Every day is Veranda Day for Nick Lillis, and it shows. At Unlimited Exotic Pets, Nick produces high-quality monitor lizards with a deep commitment to ethical care practices and top-tier nutrition. These aren't just pets. They're responsibly bred, ethically raised animals. Whether you're looking for a new companion, starting a breeding project, or anything in between, Nick has you covered. Unlimited Exotic Pets, keeping and breeding quality without limitations. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. Do diamond pythons brumate?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're like, we throw around terms like brumate, hibernate, and estivate kind of casually, and there's like, where does one stop and the other one start? It's kind of murky. But yes, I think they do. They just hunker down in a spot and don't move for months.
Yeah, that because my diamonds have all recently done that. In the beginning, they were coming out during the day and trying to get warm in the sun. And they've now gotten to the point where they are just hiding and they don't want to do shit. They're not coming out. They're not doing anything.
Yeah, and they're like, fuck it. We're just not going to bother with this. Just fucking hunker down. Ain't going to get any, but weather's not going to get better. Let's just chill the fuck out.
And that's what's kind of crazy though, is like right now it actually warmed up a bit where it's, we're in the low 80s now during the day. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if it's just the lack of food, the fact that they've eaten once since October, that they're just done. They're done with it.
That's weird if it's getting up in the 80s that they're not coming out, but I don't know. I've never been able to keep them outside, so.
It's still going down to the 50s, at night. So, but yeah, I'm sure that once I throw them a rat or a mouse, they're going to come back out.
They're going to have to. Yeah. Break it down. So I got all sorts of molecular information I prepared for this on the evolution and re-evolution of snake eyes from lizard ancestors and that whole process, as well as the evolution of ears, both mammalian ears and reptile ears and snake ears to the extent that they have ears, and all of that stuff, and when and why all this stuff happens, and why do they not have an external eardrum? How many ear bones does a snake have? One. Same as a lizard, because snakes are lizards. They're highly derived lizards. So yeah, I've got that all sorted out for you if you want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, man. Let's get into it. I mean, we might as well just jump right in with, all right. So the whole thing, I was talking to my friend Paul, and he told me that all snakes come from blind snakes, essentially, and that they came from this snake that has, no useful eyes, right? And then so essentially they evolved to not have useful eyes, and then they re-evolved having useful eyes. Is that accurate? Or after doing some research, what are your thoughts on that?
It's not completely. It's a bit off the mark, but not completely. It is. Snakes didn't evolve from blind snakes. Blind snakes are snakes. Blind snakes are just considered to be the most basal snakes. So if you have the root of the family tree of snakes, they are the lowest branch off of the trunk of the tree of life for snakes. They're the lowest branch. They are the most primitive. Even the word primitive is a bit misleading, because if you think of the word primitive, you think of like less capable or lesser than, and you think of advanced as, advanced must be better than primitive. But those are our own biases we bring to things. Advanced is better described as derived, i.e. specialized, and basal or primitive is, just closer to the root of the tree. If it works fine, it's fine. It's not necessarily primitive, or basal shouldn't be looked at as a pejorative sort of term. And we have our own little biases, and we tend to think of it that way.
Sure.
No snake alive today evolved from a blind snake. Really, the blind snakes, the farther back in time you go, well, snakes, we're not even entirely sure when snakes kind of came on the scene. Snakes are difficult in evolutionary terms because they do not fossilize well at all. When you have a very highly articulated skeleton, that means the connective tissue, the cartilage that separates your vertebrae and everything, for that highly articulated spine, you have more soft bits between your hard bits to allow that flexibility. But when you die, anything dies and starts to decompose, the soft bits just disintegrate really quickly. Within days, the soft bits are gone. And then what happens to your vertebrae and your ribs and your bones is they get just dispersed. So you have small animals with light bones that are highly articulated. They just fall off. They fall apart. So when you find fossil snakes, you usually find very, very fragmentary, a few vertebrae, a piece of a mandible. They just don't stay together very long. And because they're small and lightly built, early snakes, they tend to get crushed, and so the fossil record for early snakes is really poor. There's a bunch of well-known specimens, but considering the length of time that snakes have been around, it's really a poor fossil record for all of those reasons. So you have two ways you can kind of look at the origin of snakes itself. And one is with a fossil record, which is very spotty. And then the other is using genetics, and you can use what's called a molecular clock. Though mutations in the genome are rare, they do occur at fairly regular rates. So when you take the genomes of any two snakes, and you compare the amount of differences, you can get a rudimentary calculation for when they last shared a common ancestor by counting. If you know that a mutation occurs at this rate over this period of time, the total number of differences, i.e. which are mutations, you can kind of run the clock in reverse and estimate when these genomes were basically synced up, and that was your last common ancestor node. And you can do that. And those estimates vary and are different, and it's not an exact science. A molecular clock method is useful for a very ballpark idea of something. And we know, based on the fossil record, that snakes absolutely existed in the early to mid Cretaceous. About 100 million years ago, there were definitely snakes. The molecular clock estimates range from 100 million years ago to 150 million years ago. And there is a controversial fossil in a monotypic genus, Eophis, that the authors claimed in 2015 to be the earliest snake. And that was at 167 million years ago. So in the Jurassic period, which pushed it back like almost 70 million years in the fossil record. However, that earliest fossil is somewhat controversial. It was just a few chunks of a mandible. No back, no vertebrae. The authors postulated this was a snake, a particular type of snake. Other people reevaluated those fossils in 2025 and published and sort of poked some holes in that and basically said, maybe not. That this is, at best, this is indeterminate. That you don't have enough anatomical features to really be sure to say this is a snake. And it's just a mandible. If you had back vertebrae or these sort of things, you have a better idea. But it was so fragmentary that they felt that it was not necessarily, it wasn't a smoking gun. It didn't quite prove the case that it was a snake. Could have been a snake, but you can't know. There's not enough of it left to know. So that would be at the earliest end, or even before the most generous molecular clock estimates. So between 100 and, if we have fossils that are 100 million years old, it's not like they found a fossil of the first snake ever. That means snakes existed sometime before that, prior to that fossil. You never find the first of something or the last of something. You just have like minimum and maximum age. You can say confidently that snakes have been around for at least 100 million years, probably longer. And the same works with extinction. You can say, well, they were alive at least to this point, but you don't know when the last of something died. You didn't find the bones of the last of a species. You found, maybe towards the end, but you don't necessarily know. So those dates of the end get kind of fuzzy. So snakes are roughly 100 million years, 120 million years old.
This episode is brought to you by Chewy. Most people think of Chewy for dog and cat food, but if you keep reptiles, you should absolutely be using them too. Chewy carries everything from all the brands you trust, like Exoterra, Arcadia, Zoomed, and everything in between. Live feeders to frozen rodents, enclosures, substrate, heat lamps, thermostats, water bowls, misters, and more, all in one place, shipped straight to your door. Sign up for Chewy Plus today, free for 30 days. You get free shipping, 5% rewards, and exclusive offers. I use Chewy, and you should too. Okay, so they had a common ancestor then that was a blind snake? All snakes that are alive today had a common ancestor that was a blind snake?
No.
Okay.
The last common ancestor of all snakes, all living snakes, which all living snakes are considered crown group snakes. The crown group just refers to the living group of snakes that is alive today, all of them, and all of their immediate ancestors back to that common node. That's the crown group. So all of these animals, snakes evolved from a fossorial burrowing ancestor. It would not have been a blind snake as we know a blind snake today. 100 million years ago, a burrowing ancestor was a lizard that adapted to burrowing, lost its limbs over a period of time through several different evolutionary stages and through two different mechanisms. Front limbs were lost with a single Hox gene mutation that just deleted the front limbs, and their back limbs were lost with gradual reduction and stuff. So you actually lost the front limbs first, and you have very, very primitive early snake fossils that have no vestiges of front limbs, but have hind limbs still with toes on them and stuff, like little tiny legs in the back, but nothing in the front. The back limbs are lost by a totally different mechanism, which is why pythons, boas, and basal snakes today still maintain the remnants of their pelvis and their femurs, which we call pelvic spurs. Those are actually the femurs from your back legs. They're still connected to the rudiments of your pelvis because they just got smaller gradually over time and just reduced. It wasn't the Hox gene mutation, which modifies body plan, just deleted the junction between your neck and your back. And that's the place where your front limbs go. By deleting that junction point and just having basically a back that starts at your head, you deleted the place where the front limbs are supposed to go in the body plan blueprints. So that's why some basal snakes still have a pelvis and hind limbs still, but no snake has has forelimbs, and even colubrid snakes have lost even the last remnants of their pelvis. There's no indication. Theirs is just gone completely. It's only the basal snakes that retain the hind limb anatomy.
So you could say that they technically have hind legs?
They absolutely have hind legs. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's so
100%.
wild.
And embryonically, python and boa embryos have much more developed hind limbs, like with digits and stuff. Early stage python embryos start developing back legs. And then new instructions supersede the old instructions, and they partly reabsorb those, and it shuts down that information. Basically, the early stages in embryonic development of any of these structures, you get like a collagen. Collagen is like the scaffolding on which, it's like the framework is collagen, and then cells populate that and fill out the skeleton, the framework that's made. It's like a scaffold. And then it gets filled in by cells of various types and builds the tissues and structures of the body, or the developing embryo in this case. So early stage python embryos they studied will actually develop like the collagen structure to make the complete hind limb actually starts to develop. And then mutations that have accrued since then shut that process down at a very early stage. And you're left with like these little like detached like rudiments of the pelvis and your femurs that we call pelvic spurs. And that's all that develops. Everything else just goes away. But it actually does start to develop, and then it gets shut down. So yeah.
So
pythons and boas absolutely have hind limbs.
And that's similar to like people being born with tails and stuff like that.
It's a little different, but it's similar in that, earlier primates obviously had tails. And then you get to the ape lineage and there's no tails. And we're in the ape lineage, but we do have a tail. It's called your coccyx or your tailbone. Your tailbone is like the last 4 or 5 vertebrae of your primate tail that have just been so gradually over time, they have been reduced in size and drawn up and fused together into this fused bone. It's actually multiple bones that are fused together to form your tailbone. And now it's an internal structure that really doesn't really serve a whole hell of a lot of purpose. It is just our ancestors for the last, however many millions of years have been slowly absorbing our tail. And now it's a completely internal structure.
Wow. All right. So why don't snakes have eyelids? Is it because they evolved into these fossorial burrowing animals and then they evolved to have vision again and like their eyes became more prominent, but it was just covered by a scale? Like why no eyelids?
Okay. So we got to finish the blind snake thing. Basically, a group of lizards evolved to be fossorial and losing limb reduction as an adaptation. Most of the adaptations anatomically to snakes are adaptations for burrowing. There's a lot of skull modification and body plan modification that goes into that over time. And you see this process happening now. Like there's a bunch of different independently evolved legless lizards. Mostly they're skink versions of skinks that are completely legless, or some have 4 limbs, but they're the most ridiculously tiny limbs. But they're like, why does this? Because they're in the process of going away. There's that bipus, the weird 2-legged lizard in Mexico that has like weirdly developed front limbs and no back limbs at all, but it's fossorial.
Wow.
And you also have pygopods, which are legless geckos in Australia. They're legless geckos that mostly eat other geckos. Some of them are completely legless. Other ones they call scaly foot. They'll have like these little like flaps, like a flipper. It's like a little flap, and that's all that's left. But some of them, like Burton's legless lizards, they're basically virtually completely legless. But those geckos evolved to be legless independently of the skinks that evolved to be legless, and neither of those groups have anything to do with the group of lizards that evolved that ultimately gave rise to snakes. So this process of evolving, if you're burrowing around and losing your legs, keeps happening over and over again. One time, 100-ish million years ago, it led to snakes. These other lineages, who knows where it will go. But these are independent evidence of evolutionary convergence on body plan because you're doing a similar sort of lifestyle, and this works. As far as the blind snake thing goes, blind snakes are the most primitive snake. the last common ancestor of all snakes was probably more similar to a blind snake than to a python or a rattlesnake, but it would not have been a blind snake as we know them to be, because they continue to evolve too. Blind snakes might seem very basal and primitive, have a lot of these primitive characteristics, but they have been evolving for the 100 million years, the whole 100 million years too. They haven't been in a stasis. They have changed as well. So while that last common ancestor might have been reminiscent of a blind snake, it might have lived a lifestyle similar to that of a blind snake. It wouldn't have been a blind snake in the sense that we know a blind snake to exist today. And those adaptations to burrowing that gave rise to snakes are things like, in addition to limb reduction and ultimately limb loss, a lot of fusion of the skull bones. Lizards have a lot of different parts, bones in their skull and their cranium and all this stuff. And what you see in snakes is a reduction in the number of bones by fusion. So particularly on the top and the front of the head, because as you're plowing through dirt and rocks and things, you don't want to have a delicate, fragile, multi-part skull. You want to have a battering ram because you're smashing through stuff, through dirt and soil and this stuff. So you have like a fusion of all these frontal bones in the skull, and just a simplification and reinforcing of the skull, the top and the forward portions of the skull, which is also why if you're also probably nocturnal and you live a life deprived of most light because it's at night and or you're underground most of the time, your eyes become very secondary. They're not nearly as important to you, and they become a liability. If you have a big eye that you don't need and you're plowing through loose soil and dirt, you're going to get your eye poked out. It's not a thing. It becomes a liability to you and for no benefit. So in those cases, it is very hard to evolve a new structure. It is much easier to lose a structure. So evolving a complex eye is a long, very long, multi-stage process that just keeps building on things for millions and millions of years. Reducing an eye to a more rudimentary level is much easier. Blind snakes have eyes, but just like cave-dwelling species, it's not really much use to them. But they're very, very small because that area where this soft bit, surrounded by all the hard bits, that's vulnerable to getting poked out and stuff, that's not doing any good, just keeps getting smaller and smaller to where you're functionally nearly blind, hence the name blind snake. So the ancestors of snakes and lizards have 3 eyes, not 2 eyes. You have your 2 eyes that we're all familiar with, but they also maintain a parietal or perineal eye on the top of the head, which is a light sensitive thing. It adjusts your circadian rhythms with your day-night cycle. It's not an eye that you use to see things, but it's a light-sensitive third eye on the top of your head that attaches to your perineal gland, and it helps regulate body functions and circadian rhythms and such. That is a structure that is truly ancient. That parietal eye seems to have evolved between 430 and 450 million years ago in fish. And thus, the earliest tetrapods that came onto land would have had that. Amphibians would have had it. Early reptiles had it. And even to this day, this 450 million year old third eye is still seen in most lizards, still have it. But also lampreys and a lot of sharks still have it. So what happened is dicynodont synapsids, which are the ancestors of mammals like us, lost their parietal eye about 250 million years ago in the Permian period, lost it completely. Because it requires a kind of a soft spot in the top of your skull. It fused together and closed over. Tortoises, again, closed over. They secondarily lost that. Some lineages, it's less useful than for others. Most lizards, it's still there. It still provides some rudimentary function. Snakes lost theirs. Again, if you have to fuse all the bones on the top of your skull and reinforce your skull to be fossorial, you're not really exposing it to light anyway, and so its primary function is not really useful to you. And again, having a weak, soft spot on the top of your head because of your lifestyle, it's a detriment to you. So snakes lost the third eye, the parietal eye, and early snakes would have had very, very, very poor vision. Would they have been completely blind? And blind snakes, I suspect probably not. But it's you're looking at such an incomplete fossil record that you couldn't really say one way or the other with absolute confidence. So then snakes evolve. Basically, when snakes, after the genesis of snakes as these fossorial animals, they become snakes, as you might recognize in some recognizable form. They radiate, they diversify into other niches, and some of those niches are not being fossorial. And then they evolve. All snakes evolve from a fossorial ancestor, and then they evolve away from that. Some of them stick with being fossorial, like your blind snakes, and then others do not. And they re-evolve good vision. But that's why if you look at the eye anatomy of a lizard and a snake, it's very different. Snakes have very different eyes structurally to lizards, even though they are technically lizards. Because they went through this phase where their eyes were reduced to a very rudimentary state, and then they re-evolved good vision a second time. So they had good vision, it got reduced, and when they re-evolved to have good vision again, it was done in a different way. So eye anatomy of lizards and snakes is very different because it reflects that evolutionary history.
Wow.
And then you have the same thing happens again. You have snakes now that are fossorial, that become fossorial secondarily from a terrestrial ancestor that itself was secondarily terrestrial to a fossorial ancestor, which itself evolved from a terrestrial ancestor. You had a lizard running around with good eyesight that evolved into a fossorial snake with poor eyesight, that then evolved to a terrestrial snake with good eyesight, that then evolved again into a fossorial snake with bad eyesight. That it just keeps that kind of thing just keeps happening.
Aren't there turtles that have gone from being terrestrial to living in the water to being terrestrial, and like they've gone back and forth in a similar fashion?
I don't want to speak out of turn in that I'm not well versed in that. I know turtle evolution, broadly speaking, is a mess. Mm-hmm. Even what exactly turtles, and I say turtles, but really you're talking about chelonians more broadly.
Yeah.
It's a mess, and there's disagreement in the scientific community. What even are they? Yeah. Are they archosaurs? Well, no, but kind of. But they're kind of like, they branched off so early on. What do they think? I think they call them, they're technically archosauromorphs, to where they are not, they branched off before the true archosaurs evolved. Like, they have been doing their own thing since, like, all of your crocodilians, dinosaurs, birds, these are archosaurs, which just means ruling reptiles. But they seem to have split off and done their own thing before the true archosaurs even evolved. They've been off on their own tangent for that long. Like, are they even reptiles? Like, they're kind of, they are very, very, very diverged from everything else. So I don't want to, and their fossil record is spotty, and it's like, there's disagreement. So I don't want to, and I'm not as well versed in the evolutionary history of that group. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if that wasn't true, because you see that with a lot of things. Well, look at, like, okay, fish evolve into tetrapods. Tetrapods evolve, conquer the land, become amphibians. Amphibians, in some form, ultimately give rise to reptiles. Reptiles diverge into different groups. One of them is synapsids. Synapsids become mammals. We're mammals. Thus, phylogenetically, we are all fish. Because you are a part of all the groups that your ancestors were part of. So you're still a fish. Like, you're all these, you are a mammal, but you're also still a reptile, but you are also a synapsid, but you are also a tetrapod, and you are also a fish. You never surrender your membership card from the group that, you're just a very, very, very highly specialized land fish. It's true. People don't think about that. We are land fish. And
I have heard about people being born with like a vestigial gill or something like that right before their ear. It's just like this stupid little hole. Like, you'd never know that that's what it is. But what was the word? You told me the word last night. Atavism? Is that the right word? Yeah. Is that where you get like this random mutation, or would that be
basically Your genome is a lot like the hard drive on your computer in that it is clogged up with a bunch of garbage, old junk that you don't access. It doesn't do any good anymore. If you have a terabyte of hard drive space and of memory, when you delete something off of your hard drive, it doesn't actually delete it off of your hard drive, generally speaking. Unless you really make it do it, it doesn't. It just, new instructions say, ignore this. It's still there, though. You're just being ignored. If your computer runs out, exceeds it can overwrite that information if it needs the space. But if it doesn't need the space, it's still on there. You'd be surprised. This is why criminals get in trouble all the time. The FBI will seize their computer and all that shit they thought was deleted, they can recover it because it didn't really delete it. You deleted it. You don't see it anymore. You can't access it, but it's still on that drive unless you are so out of memory that your computer needed to overwrite that with new information, then it would be gone. But unless that happens, it generally doesn't. It's still there. Your genome functions in much the same way. These are the instructions for building whatever, a tetrapod that has 12 toes, because early tetrapods had 12 fingers and toes. And then later, new instructions come along, new mutations. Okay, we're not doing 12 toes anymore. Now we're going to do 5 toes on each foot. Okay, cool. Now it's 5. The instructions that coded for making 12 digits are still there, buried. But there's new sections, new mutations say, don't do 12. Now we're doing 5. And every once in a while, you can have a situation called an atavism, which is a mutation occurs that basically reboots old instructions and an ancestral trait can resurface again. And that happens. It's like, you ever met somebody that had an extra nipple?
I don't think I've met. One of my coworkers, his kid was born with, I think, 6 digits, though. So when you said that, that kind of made sense.
That's polydactyly. I'm not sure that polydactyly is related to early tetrapods with extra fingers necessarily. There are other reasons why that can happen. Although in cats, polydactyly is hereditary. You can intentionally make cats with extra digits. Like it's but I'm losing my own train of thought now.
Sorry.
I'm so easily distracted in my old age. This stuff is complicated, but yeah, these old instructions supersede new instructions. New instructions supersede old instructions, but the old ones are still there, and under the right circumstances, it might get accidentally turned back on. I had a friend grow up at an extra nipple, and it's never the extra nipple people. It's never like an extra complete nipple. It's like a little partial nipple, like up here or something. Why? Because early mammal ancestors had 8 nipples, but we only have 2 nipples. Where are the other nipples? Look at any other mammal that's not a primate. You got a bunch of nipples, don't you?
Why do dudes even have nipples, though, Nick?
Because all vertebrate embryos are basically female, and then they develop like a female, and then the Y chromosome turns on, and now it's like, okay, and it's just changed around. The difference between men and women, or male and female in anything, is mostly hormonally induced during the embryonic development process. It's all the same structures. They're just rearranged and they develop differently. It's not really, it's mostly differences in gene expression controlled by other factors. It's not that you have different stuff. It's that the same stuff is expressed differently. So these same structures, it's like, so you have vestigial nipples that don't really function as much, but men do have a small amount of breast tissue. It just doesn't, it's there, but it doesn't come to full fruition if you have a Y chromosome, which is why some men rarely can get breast cancer, but you don't ever hear about that. But you can absolutely get breast cancer as a man. It's very rare because the type of tissue that tends to get malignancies in it is you have so little of it as a man, but you have a little bit of it. So it is possible. But if you have such a small amount, it's very rare for it to get a tumor and to get cancer in it, but it does happen. And most people listen to this and are like, what? Men can get breast cancer? 100%. But you never hear of that because it is admittedly a very rare thing, but you have a little bit of that. But that tissue never develops in that way because of your Y chromosome. So it's a lot of that stuff. So
I'm still hung up on the eyelids. Why don't snakes have eyelids?
Why don't they have eyelids?
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't have eyelids. That is a pretty good question. I think it's because blind snake or early fossorial snakes lost their eyelids in the process of reducing their eye. All of those structures got so reduced that they were gone. And then on the backside of it, adapting to surface dwelling again, when they had to re-evolve a complex eye, a better quality eye, the eyelid never came back. So I guess a snake with eyelids would be perfectly serviceable, but instead they just another series of mutations occurred, and now you have a clear spectacle that covers your eye and eliminates the need for an eyelid.
That makes sense, right? Is that like if you were tunneling and burrowing around, you would want to have a random mutation where you now have a scale going over your eye, where you have a protective lens rather than a soft eye. I mean, right?
Look at geckos. You have living geckos today that you have the sticky, they're not really sticky toes. Their toes aren't sticky at all. It's not how the little tiny microscopic cilia work to give them the ability to run up walls. But you have the sticky toe gravity defying geckos that don't have eyelids. And then you've got like leopard geckos and these geckos that don't have that toe anatomy and do have eyelids. So you have a deep diverged two different clades within geckos, on some with eyelids and some without.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. It's you see evolutionary reversals all the time where something is like, oh, this is beneficial. And if something's beneficial, it might evolve multiple times independently. And if then something changes and you lose it, and that'd be useful to have again, then it re-evolves again. Albeit like the snake eye, it didn't really go away. They were never like gone, but it went from complexity, lizard complexity, to very rudimentary, to then complexity again. But when it re-evolved complexity the second time, it evolved it in a different manner and mechanically different ways than the lizard eye. And they lost their parietal eye because, again, you have to fuse those bones on the top of your skull, that you can't have a soft spot on the top of your skull.
And this is essentially just all survivability, right? The better you survive, the more likely
everything.
Yeah. So snakes lost their limbs because it helped them survive better at that point in time, and then they went underground, which probably made them survive better, right? And then like that. That's all of evolution, right? All of evolution is you didn't get picked off and you were able to reproduce.
Evolution is just a series of lucky mutations that occurred that allowed you to survive the short-term situation. There is no guiding hand. There is no long-term plan. There is no strategy. It's just dumb luck. This mutation happened and it helped this survival. And it gave this particular animal that had that mutation a survival benefit. It survived. Animals with that mutation survived a little bit longer, left a few more offspring behind. In some way, there was positives. There's always two concepts: positive selection and negative selection pressure. Things that aren't helpful are negatively selected against, meaning you don't live as long, you don't pass your genes on as much, you contribute less to the gene pool. And things that are positively selected for, the opposite is true. You live longer or you produce more offspring, a greater survival rate of those offspring. And it's just that. And it's always super duper short-sighted. It's like, well, this gets you through this week or this period of time. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be advantageous in the long time. So reducing your eyes was beneficial for those early snakes that were fossorial, but it's a shit show if you're trying to live on the surface. There was no long-term, but that fortunately complexity did re-evolve, and you can have terrestrial snakes that are, even diurnal day active snakes. So, and sometimes, the difference in survival and extinction is like, were these beneficial mutations? Did these occur? Because it's just random that some mutation occurs, every so often. Like, was a beneficial mutation, did it happen that gave you an advantage within a time frame before you got extinct? If there's always climate changing, there's always vegetation, there's always changes to every ecosystem. It's never really static. It's always kind of moving in these longer term trends. And like, if the situation is changing and beneficial mutations accrue within a reasonable enough time frame to adapt to those changes, you survive. And if they don't, you don't survive. So this is, if you're not very nimble genomically, which is again why like super specialized species that are hyper specialized tend to not last as long, and very generalized generalist species tend to last a long time. Hyper specialization in biological systems is a really great way to make a living, but you'll go extinct pretty quickly because you're unable to adapt. You're so specialized, you can't just, well, like I said, like if you look at like Arctotherium, giant short-faced bears of the Pleistocene, bears that were 12 feet tall if they stood on their hind legs, super bears. But there's a great way to make a living. If you are the biggest predator in the whole continent, anybody kills, you eat whatever you can kill, and you eat what anybody else can kill. Because anybody you find a cave lion made a kill, you'll just scare them off. They're not going to take you on. You're too big. And you can take it's like, that's great as long as there's a supply of giant animals to eat. When the situation changes, your prey goes away. You're so specialized, the giant bear can't just switch to eating rabbits. You need to be eating big things. If there's no more big things, you're gone. So the species that tend to last the longest, like look at like the end Pleistocene mass extinction in just North America. What species survived? The generalists. Dire wolves died out. Regular gray wolves, it's a little smaller, did fine. It's like, because a pack of wolves can take down an elk. They can also live on a rabbit or smaller game. They're much more flexible with their diet. They're more generalists. They survive and make it through. So hyper specialization is a double-edged sword. It's really great in the short term and really detrimental in the longer term. So you see the survival is definitely skews towards the more generalized species.
Do colubrids have the pelvic structure similar to that of? Okay,
they've lost even that. Any vestiges that they ever had hind limbs are gone effectively in colubrids.
They just don't need them.
It's really just, well, boas and pythons don't need them either. But just by not needing them doesn't mean it goes away. In like a python or a boa, it's reduced to the point where it's not creating drag. It's not causing a loss of fitness. So it's just there. It's not beneficial necessarily or detrimental. So there's not enough negative selection pressure against what's left of their hind limbs and pelvis to select against it enough to get it to go away. So that's why they're still there. And pythons and boas do, in some species, will actively use them. If you've ever bred, a lot of pythons or even boas, you'll see males that tend to have larger spurs than females anyway, and they'll use them to kind of like pick at the female near the tail and kind of tickle them and get them excited about the project. So they have evolved a secondary function for the rudiments of those hind limbs.
So
males.
It's
sometimes
still being selected for almost, right? Because it's part of their courtship.
Yes, in males, which is why you see a bias towards, there's no reason for the female to have them anymore. So the males, they seem to be, on average, are slightly bigger, and they will actually use them. Although a lot of males don't, but some of them, on occasion, will use those spurs. So that's a secondary use of an existing structure. A structure that evolved for walking on land as a lizard, that then got lost to be a fossorial species, and then a snake, and then has now found a secondary usage much, much later in courtship.
Wow.
Most of evolutionary biology is a story of just really, really efficient recycling. There are very, very, very few novel new structures that ever really evolve. It's almost always the same stuff everybody has that is repurposed, migrates, reshaped, and reuses the same things. Like if you look at, there's a lot of beetles that have crazy elaborate like horns on their, like staghorn beetles, these crazy horn-like projections. There's a whole bunch of them. Those are their wings. Beetles have two pairs of wings.
What?
There's always the outer pair and the inner pair of wings. What's happened with those is that the outer pair of wings has rotated forward and evolved into, it's those tissues that then form those structures. They still have the other set of wings though. It's not a horn. It's reusing something else for a new purpose, but it's not really a new thing. It's a new use for an old thing. And that is a lot of evolution is like that. A lot of it is just repurposing things. Another thing that's really interesting to talk about is snakes' ears and lizard ears and then mammal ears. And if you look at that, snakes are nearly deaf. They can only sense sound wave, low frequency sound, even sometimes through the air, mostly with their jaw touching the ground, because they are like, okay, humans and mammals have 3 inner ear bones, and they're the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, which we colloquially refer to as the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. And those 2 of those bones all these are basically early tetrapods. The back portion of your jawbone, your mandible back here, had multiple additional bones in it. We just have this one big jawbone. Your lower mandible is one bone. It used to be multiple additional bones. They're all stuck together there at the back end of that. In mammals, what's happened is the last 3 of those bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes, have migrated up, been reduced in size, and they're the inner ear bones. Those are your 3 inner ear bones that allow you to have really good hearing are actually your jaw bones. And in reptiles, they're still jaw bones. So what happens is we have the malleus, incus, and stapes. Those jaw bones are now form our inner ear bones and allow us to hear really good. In lizards and snakes, they have 1 inner ear bone, and it's just the stapes, the last one. So that stapes is the only one they have. The other ones, the malleus and the incus, are still part of their jaw anatomy, and the stapes is still connected to the jaw. So that's why when they're sitting there with their head flat on the ground like that, they can sense vibration, the footfalls of prey animals and whatnot, through their jawbone, because those ear bones are their jawbones. In us, they've just migrated in. But again, we didn't evolve specialized ear bones. We just repurposed reptilian jawbones for a new job that was more advantageous. It's this recycling of old things for new purposes. Yeah, they got smaller, they migrated up, and all this, they changed a lot, but it's those same bones. In reptiles, it's just the last one. The stapes is the only one that is operative in hearing, and the other 2 are still part of their jaw anatomy. So,
jeez.
Which is why
they can hear.
Snakes really poorly. They can sense the vibration, and that is what hearing is, sort of. They don't have external eardrums or any sort of tympanic membrane or anything like a lizard would have. But again, if you evolve to be fossorial and you're burrowing all the time, just like you don't want to have a big soft eyeball that's not doing any good, you don't have a big soft eardrum either for the same reasons. Also, underground, you're not hearing as much. So these things are not so important. So the reduction of the external component of the ear from a lizard ancestor mirrors that of the loss and complexity of the eye. And so you just end up getting smoothed over and scaled over completely because you don't need it. And then when they emerged out of the dirt and diversified into more terrestrial forms that we find, more common today, they never re-evolved that tympanic membrane eardrum on the outside again. They just stayed without it. So that's why their hearing is terrible. And lizard hearing isn't, way better. It's basically the same structure, but at least they've still got the rudiments of an eardrum of sorts. So, yeah.
Damn.
It's just because a snake that had really awesome hearing would probably do great, but just because something would be useful doesn't mean it gets to re-evolve, because it's random chance that certain mutations will occur that'll start the process to go down that road. And without that, I'm sure if some snake species started the process of evolving really awesome hearing, that would be beneficial and provide a survival benefit. But just because it theoretically would provide a benefit doesn't mean it happens. There's still this randomness to it all.
What about the heat sensing organs? Did they gain those because they didn't have vision, or is that like an after the fact thing, or is it not even related?
That is one of those things that is a little hard to pinpoint because it doesn't fossilize. That's all soft tissue. You don't see it in the bones. So the combination of the crappy, super fragmentary, super poor fossil record for early snakes and the fact that it's entirely a soft tissue thing, wouldn't preserve anyway, it's really difficult to know when that came about. Probably 100-ish million years ago, pretty early on. If you look at boas, which are a really, really, really ancient early group of snakes, they pretty much all have that. So it's probably baked in. Pythons all have it. And pythons' last common ancestor with boas was 50 million years ago. And they are, so it has to predate that. The fact that it occurs in both these lineages indicates the fact that it occurs in both these lineages indicates it almost certainly predates that split. So you're way back in deep time, probably in the Cretaceous period that thermoceptive pits. But again, what happened? Okay, this endless reversal back and forth of evolutionary, genes that express phenotype differently. Lizards evolve into fossorial snakes that have fused skull bones and then lose their eyes or reduce their eyes and lose all this stuff to burrow. And then they get it all back again in a different way when they become not fossorial snakes. And then pythons evolve, and one lineage of pythons, Aspites, evolves back into a fossorial species again. And then it refuses a bunch of these bones because modern snakes have kind of complex skulls again with multiple bones and parts. It doesn't really look like a blind snake skull anymore, or it does fusions. They've gotten more, it has reverted back to not like lizards, but like lizards in its more delicate structures because you're not plowing through the rocks anymore. And then you get to Aspites. What happens? Reversal, back under the sand. So you get a refusion of those bones back into a more fossorial mode with fused frontal bones are reinforced, a much more rigid jaw structure. You have a massive overbite, a streamlined head that's sloped down, and you lose your heat pits because you eat mostly reptiles and you're in the dirt. And plowing through sand in Australia with your heat picks, forward-facing heat pits permanently clogged up with the sand sucks, and you don't hardly need them because you eat 80% reptiles anyway. But they had them. This led Kluge in 1993 when he published his phylogeny of the pythonine snakes, which had a huge amount of influence in the academic community for a long time. And it was basically a bunch of nonsense. He made a miscalculation. He thought pythons must have evolved in Australia because there's the most species of them. They're the most diverse in Australia, and Aspites are an Australian clade. And those are clearly the most primitive basal snakes because they don't even have heat pits. That was completely wrong. They're actually just the most specialized pythons that have secondarily evolved to lose their heat pits in an adaptation to burrowing. And so pythons are actually, the best evidence for pythons' origins might actually be Germany of all places. So it's definitely not Australia. Wow. They're just highly specialized. But even there, they still do have one heat pit. Underneath on their top lip, on the rostral scale, they actually have a kind of a crescent-shaped heat pit. You don't notice it because it's facing straight down at the ground. When they're sitting like this, it's facing straight down. But by facing straight down, when they're cruising through loose sediments, it's not getting jammed up and damaged because it's underneath that. The slope of their head comes down and it's underneath here. It's protected. But you will see behaviorally, Aspites, when they're looking around for stuff, sometimes they'll do this thing like if there's prey or whatever around, they will rear up their head like this and they'll kind of angle back like this. Oh, why are they doing it? So that this heat pit is functional. They'll actually go up and rear back to get some use out of that structure because it would only be useful if you have your head kind of angled back up and back a little bit. So it's not that it was they lost most of that stuff.
Aspites is so weird. They're such a weird python. Like especially they rub on stuff too, which I had no idea they rub on stuff like a cat. A friend sent me a video and I sent it to Lucas, or Lucas ended up seeing it and he was like, yeah, they do that. And it's like, that's so weird.
Yeah, no, one of these days we're going to finish that book. But I'm about due for Lucas to give me what's up? When are you going to give me your revisions for this chapter? I'm like, it's need to get on it, but and finish that up. But I got other writings I'm going to have to start getting on, so I got to finish that book here pretty quick. But it's getting close. But so I've done a lot of morphological analysis and a lot of deep dives on these sort of issues as it pertains to Aspites for that book. And yeah, they have a lot of weird behaviors. It's all lifestyle related though. They do things that almost seem not cool. Because they'll go down mammal burrows and stuff and eat the occupants. A lot of snakes will do that, but they do that a lot. So you get womas and blackheads will do things if you give them a rat, they will just not even constrict it sometimes. They'll bite it and then they'll just throw a coil against it and smash it into the side of the cage until it dies. And it takes a long time, and you kind of feel bad if it was a live rat or something. Oh, fuck. Kind of takes a minute. But the reason why would that behavior evolve? Because if you're in a narrow burrow, there's no reason. You can't wrap a bunch of coils around it and efficiently do that. The only way you can dispatch your prey is to like throw a coil into it and smack it press it into the sidewall of the burrow until it expires because there's not enough room to properly constrict. So behaviorally, it makes perfect sense given their lifestyle habits. But it's weird.
It is weird.
They do a lot of weird stuff. They're very strange, but they're the only semi-fossorial pythons. And so that's why their heads look weird and their bodies feel weird and they behave weird and they eat weird stuff. They're just very divergent from the others.
Is there a fossorial? Is there a fossorial boa?
Completely fossorial boa? That's a good question. There's a lot more boas. But what constitutes a true boa depends on who you ask. You have we tend to lump all these New World and even some Old World basal snakes that give live birth and call them all boas. But some of them are not in the boa family. They're whole families of snakes that are not boas. They're probably slightly more closely related to boas than they are to pythons, but they're like your sand boas are members of the family Ericinae. They're Ericine snakes. Not really true boas. They're another equal group of animals equal to boas and pythons taxonomically. We call them boas because they mostly give live birth. And there's New World and Old World ones. So your New World Ericine snakes are like rubber boas and rosy boas.
Yeah.
And then Old World are all your sand boas. But they're Asian species, African species, and New World species. But there's a pretty deep divide between the New World and Old World Ericine snakes. You've got your round island boas, the Boileridae. They're their own family of, one almost extinct species now, but they're their own thing. The bromeliad boas are their own thing. The Tropidophidae, they're their own little wood snakes. We call them boas because they're little tiny snakes that give live birth, but they're their own family of snakes. We tend to lump all of those miscellaneous families of snakes that give live birth and call them all boas colloquially, but they are, so I guess it depends on the sense of, there are fossorial boas for sure. If you take the macro view of what constitutes a boa.
I wonder why they don't call Nerodia boas then.
What?
I wonder why they don't call Nerodia boas if they give live birth.
Yeah, but they're clearly well nested within the Colubridae. They are absolutely a colubrid. These other groups are basal snakes, the hind limbs and a pelvis group, Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Live birth is not as big a deal as people think it is. We only think it's a big deal because we think we're special. We think, we give live birth. And we're obviously the pinnacle of all evolution, right? Yeah. It's all about us. And since we give live birth, we think so egotistically about ourselves. People automatically assume that anything that people do must be the preferred way of doing things. So we all look at bipedalism like it's an improvement over quadrupedalism. We think bipedalism is some awesome thing, and knuckle walking is primitive. We think live birth is awesome and advanced because we do it, and egg laying must be primitive. And it's not really like that. In fact, there's some evidence to suggest the last common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees was fully bipedal. And the chimpanzee lineage may have well evolved knuckle walking secondarily from a fully bipedal ancestor, because knuckle walking is frankly more efficient. It is more energy efficient to walk like a chimpanzee, and knuckle walking is more energy efficient than bipedalism. Bipedalism comes with a whole bunch of problems. You ever notice that humans take hours and hours and hours and hours to give birth and often have problems doing so, but no other animal does? It's because when you stand upright and be fully bipedal, that reorientation of the pelvis causes a narrowing of the birth canal and causes problems. So it's a trade-off. It's not all good. They may well evolve, but we shouldn't think of what we do as humans as the advanced state, and anything else that's not that is somehow primitive. And we always tend to do that even on an unconscious level. So some of these things like live birth versus egg laying, that's not as big of a leap as you might think it is, like at all. I mean, when humans have babies, what are they in? They're in that sack. What's that sack? Yeah, it's the egg. Like you've got all those things, all those same structures you have in an eggling. Mammals still retain that. We just now it's a placenta. Now it's we're just renaming stuff. It's the same structures. It's not necessarily. And if you have boa constrictors or any boa and you have a litter of boas, what are they born in? Oh, basically a translucent egg that basically hatches the minute it comes out, and within a few moments pop and they hatch. They're basically just retaining their eggs internally the entire time. And the eggs are these soft membranes that just reduce the shell to soft translucent membrane. They basically are laying a clutch of eggs that hatch within minutes. And we call it live birth. That's really the difference. Yeah. And there's molecular evidence in sand boas that some sand boas have gone back and forth from egg laying to live birth and back and forth multiple times. It's not as big of a thing as you might think.
Jeez. You would think it would be more advantageous to lay eggs, right? I mean,
it is.
It
is in a lot of places. Well, look at to keep it, because it's a reptile podcast, to try to, I know keeping me on track is a very difficult task, I recognize. And keep me talking about snakes exclusively is utterly impossible, probably. But if you look at, here's proof that egg laying is not necessarily inferior to live birth. In Africa, there are no big boas, are there? Really no boas. You got Erisine snakes, you got your sand boas. There's no boas, really, proper boas in Africa, but you got pythons. But you have boas in Madagascar. But boas are roughly 100 million year old clade of snakes, and pythons have been around for only half that amount of time. Boas are the really ancient group. Pythons are relative newcomers. So you would have had a time where you would have had boas all throughout mainland Africa and Madagascar. Madagascar breaks off. Boas stay in Madagascar. Pythons then show up 50 million years ago and replace the boas. There's no boas in Africa, but there are pythons. But the boas would have been there 50 million years earlier. Where did the boas go? It's not likely that they just showed up and the boas had gone extinct naturally. And it's probably that the pythons outcompeted the boas. So the thing you think is primitive, it's laying eggs, was more effective and outcompeted the advanced live-bearing species, because in this situation, that was more advantage. It's not, we have to stop looking at things as primitive and advanced as a value judgment on how good or bad something is. It's like, it's what works that matters. And in a lot of instances, egg laying is superior. And because it offers, like the cost of reproduction on a female boa, they have to carry all that around all the time. That's difficult. A python lays a clutch of eggs. If it really got rough for that python trying to take care of those eggs, it could leave the eggs. It could leave. It could abandon its eggs, find something to eat, and live to lay another clutch of eggs later. A boa doesn't have that option. It's got to ride it out all the way to the end. It doesn't have the option of just abandoning. So in some certain situations, certain climate situations in particular, egg laying might be the beneficial way to go. What you'd probably find is that at higher altitudes, where the temperatures are going to be, you have bigger temperature swings, live birth might be more advantageous because you can move your developing eggs that are internal to you with you to warmer places. Whereas a python would struggle at very high altitudes and in very colder climates. It might struggle to maintain those eggs because they're external, because they can't pick the eggs up and take them to a place that's warmer, but the female boa can. But in more lowland, temperature stable environments and places like Africa, where it's pretty flat by and large, there's not a ton of mountains for the most part, you expend less energy because you don't have to do much to the eggs, so you don't have to carry them around with you. So
isn't it weird that there's both live bearing and egg laying lizards and snakes, even mammals, but there's not with birds, right? There's zero birds that give live birth.
No, there isn't.
That's really weird.
Well, the eggs are working just fine. There's no selection pressure to change that.
Yeah.
There's no pressure to change that. So certainly we know that the ancestors of birds, some of them gave live birth and some of them laid eggs. Well, I say the ancestors in the macro sense, and I'm talking about like archosaurs in general. All living birds are descended from the theropod lineage of dinosaurs, basically, and they're all appear to have all been egg layers. But there are other Mesozoic reptiles that clearly gave live birth. All the marine forms, so all your plesiosaurs, all your mosasaurids, all that stuff, we know. Ichthyosaurs, which go back to the Triassic, they're not even archosaurs, but gave live birth because we have fossils that have embryonic babies in them and stuff. It's like they obviously gave life. Well, what good are you going to be a fully marine species laying eggs? Like it's not going to work very well. So we know that some of these archosaur forms did have live birth in some instances, but it just the lineage that gave rise to birds, it was all about egg laying still. And there's just been no. If you look at the amount of time that again, just like we're land fish, birds are still theropod dinosaurs. You're always a member of all the groups your ancestors were part of. So you never stopped being a dinosaur when you became a chicken. You never stopped being all these other things. But there's just no reason to, it's just always been, there's no pressure to change that. It's been, look at the time that theropod lineage has been around. You are talking 240 million years that this lineage has been just kicking ass and taking names. Because while we think of dinosaurs being extinct, you know how many freaking bazillions of species of birds there are?
Yeah.
Dinosaurs are just as diverse in species richest now as they ever were in the Cretaceous period. It's just that we call them birds, and there's a couple thousand species of them alive today. We eat them every day. I eat a pound of dinosaur meat every single day. About a pound of dinosaur meat every freaking day. They're just as successful as they've ever been. Yeah, they got smaller and maybe less terrifying, but it's like they're still. So what's the pressure if they've been laying eggs that whole time? Obviously that's working really good, right? It's like you're not going to find many lineages of vertebrates that have a fossil record, a continuous line of descent for 250 million years of just kicking ass and taking names. An asteroid couldn't even take them out. Like they're doing just fine.
So what happened to the other, did the other dinosaurs get totally wiped out? The heavy bodied, quadruped, like walking on four limbs, heavy bodied. They almost, they're more reminiscent of a rhinoceros or an elephant, did they just couldn't adapt to the world after the impacts?
That's what it looks like. It's like you don't really know when not everything died at the KPG event. Like most things died. And then within a period of time after that, ecosystems collapse and things become extinct. Birds have, if you look at what are the attributes of the things that survive, that tells you what it's like. And you see, birds, they do have a very high metabolic rate. They need to eat a lot. They spend a lot of calories. They're very energy dependent animals, but they can fly. And if your landscape is devastated and ecosystems collapse and food becomes very few and far between and hard to find, the fact that you can fly and you got good eyesight is a pretty big advantage. It's like if you got to go hunt really far and wide to find something, a seed to eat or whatever, it's like, well, you're in real good shape if you can fly.
Yeah.
And then you look at what else survived. Crocodilians, another archosaur. And it's not that they're going to go a super long way to find food. It's that they can go a super long time without any food. You have very long lifespans, and you can go a tremendously long period of time without eating. So if you had a nuclear winter, which would have happened where global temperatures would have plummeted for 5 or 8 years or 10 years after that, while the dust has to settle out of the atmosphere to let the light in to warm things back up, they would just power down. Like they could survive a protracted period with very little caloric intake, even at suboptimal temperatures. So they're just evolutionary. They were just built to survive. But a lot of the other stuff wasn't. If you needed a lot of those animals would have been warm. They would have mostly been warm-blooded. And so a warm-blooded metabolism requires more calories. If you're a big, like an ankylosaur, a big grazer with its warm-blooded, it's huge, and you weigh as much as a car, and you need to eat, 180 pounds of vegetation a day just to keep going, and you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. But a very small, bird or whatever has a good chance. It doesn't need that much total volume of food relative to because it's a small animal, and it can travel far and wide to find it. So they're just set up. And then what happens immediately in the earliest Eocene, in the immediate aftermath of the KPG extinction? Birds explode and in diversity and reoccupy all those niches, even evolving back into big dinosaurs again. Basically, you have a whole clade of giant, they call them terror birds colloquially, South American clade of what's the name of it? It's going to come to me. It's but a giant group of, basically a more dinosaurian body plan re-evolves in birds, as the dominant land predator in South America is a 7-foot tall bipedal land bird with a giant skull. It's running around eating horses, but horses were the size of like a Cocker Spaniel. But I mean, it's like early horses in this era are very, very, very small, but you have a giant birds running around with like skulls this big that just like with beaks that just re-evolved the same body plan and the same lifestyle and the same dominant apex predator status that their theropod dinosaurian ancestors had before the KPG event. Because it works.
I saw that a while back. They were like trying to stop certain things from happening in the egg of a chicken to give them teeth and stuff like that, like reverse reverse evolution essentially, and like and make it where like I don't know why they didn't keep doing that, like that but wouldn't that be so dope if they made a couple of those and then got them to breed and they produced offspring that look like that?
Is it useful? No. Would I be the first one to sign up to get a Dino-chicken? 100%. Like you sign me up right now. Take my money. Take my money. You engineer me a Dino-chicken, I am there for it. There was a couple different things that happened and done by different groups. One of them, there's all this like again, back to the earlier mention of like all the old instructions for making old anatomical features are still there. They're just no longer active. And they were able to turn on genes that were no longer active, and they grew chicken teeth because birds still have all the genes to make teeth, but then new instructions. Oh, stop developing teeth. Now we're going to do a keratin-sheathed beak instead of teeth. But the teeth genes are still there. They were able to turn those on. I don't think they grew a chicken that had teeth. It looked like more like a clump of cells that grew like a tooth in a petri dish kind of a situation. It's kind of gross. Another group was able to do the same thing with the tail. This extreme truncation of the long classic theropod dinosaurian tail. They were able to found some of the genes and turn some of the genes back on that coded for a longer tail. So instead of making a chicken that has like this tiny little nub, it had like 5 or 6 vertebrae in its tail. It had an actual tail, not like a long tail, but they're on the process of growing a dinosaur-like tail because the genes are still there. They're just no longer active. And the weirdest thing I saw was it wasn't even genomics. They had just taken chicken hatchlings and they gave them a prosthetic tail. And it literally just looked like a black suction cup with a dowel sticking on this chicken's ass. Like they just took a suction. It looked like they took a little tiny toilet plunger and just stuck it on this chicken's ass. But it changed the way the chicken grew as it developed. It shifted its posture more upright to balance out this tail. Because you have these chickens walking around with this prosthetic tail and they look like little dinosaurs. because they're just become a teeter-totter. They have to like change the angle at which they're facing to compensate for the weight, so they don't otherwise just be popping a wheelie the whole time. So to keep it off the ground, it changes their posture, but they were walking around like a dinosaur because of that additional weight on the back end.
Damn.
So you could there's no reason why you could not selectively engineer a dino chicken.
Why are they not doing that?
On that.
Like, could you imagine how much people would be willing to pay for those?
I know, but then science, sometimes they get a purist streak and oh, this is just for research. It's like, no, this will pay for your research. Make some Dino-chickens. I'm in.
Yeah.
Admittedly, like 25 years ago, I thought it would be cooler because I'm picturing like leathery theropods.
Sure.
And now it turns out that all these small theropods were covered in feathers anyway. It's like a little less, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm weird. I accept the reality that all these things, that most of them had feathers. That's undeniable. But to me, it makes them slightly less cool, maybe. Because that seems like
Jurassic Park ruined it.
It seems like a leathery bird with teeth now. And now it's like, it just looks like a fluffier bird with teeth. Like, I don't, like, somehow, like, imagining, like, Tyrannosaur chicks with, like, fluffy, downy feathers makes them much less menacing.
Yeah. Yeah. Jurassic Park really ruined it.
Well, they got most everything wrong, but it was good for its time.
It was.
I'm a bit older, so I was already well versed in all that stuff, and I was like picking apart. That's not accurate. I was picking stuff apart. Like, there's no raptor. I remember watching it in 1993. It's like velociraptors are the size of a turkey. What are they doing? That's not a velociraptor. Yeah. They're the size of a freaking turkey. You know what happened if you're in a kitchen and some velociraptor busted in and everything, and instead of being huddled terrified behind a stainless steel table, I've got my drop kick the damn thing. This is a freaking dino turkey. I'm taking no shit from a velociraptor.
Not to mention they'd have zero traction.
It's like,
you ever try running away from your dog on tile floor? Like, the dog can't catch you.
Even like a lizard. You ever take like a monitor lizard that's skittish and put it on like a tile floor and watch them? They're flying and not moving forward. It's like, it looks like like an old episode of Scooby-Doo, and they go to take off, and it's like just before they got enough traction to move forward. It would just be like that. Like, they later found dromaeosaur fossils of raptor-like species that were that size.
Yeah, the Utah raptor.
Yeah, but they didn't discover Utah raptor after they'd made that movie. They just made velociraptor. Also, Utah raptor doesn't sound sexy or awesome. Velociraptor sounds badass, frankly.
Yeah.
That's a way better name, Velociraptor. Like, oh,
yeah. 18 inches tall.
What? That's the size of a freaking turkey. Like, and covered in feathers. Like, it's just an angry turkey. Like, I'm not scared of a turkey.
Did they have... Well, okay, so dinosaurs didn't have scales. They had leathery
they had scales.
Skin. Oh, they did have scales.
Birds are dinosaurs, and birds still have scales. Look at a chicken's foot. What do you think that's true. Think of a chicken foot. Oh, it's covered in scales. Why do people still want to argue that birds aren't reptiles? Like, they still have scales. And feathers are just highly modified scales.
And they molt too.
Feathers evolved from scales.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs had technically like fur, feathers, scales. All these are considered types of integument, it's called. And there's a bunch of different types of integument. Even in the same animals, you'll find like early ceratopsians, like I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce it. It's Psittacosaurus with a silent P at the beginning, just like a parrot would be, because it had like a parrot-like beak. It's this crazy early ceratopsian thing. It wasn't even all that big. Had like a bird-like beak, hence the name. Leathery skin, but then had the giant plume of like monofilament-like feathers only on the tail. So it looked like it had a broom on the top of its tail facing upright. It just looks like, why would this ever evolve ever? You would never think this could ever. It makes no sense at all. But one of the best dinosaur fossils ever discovered is one of these things from China, and it's the entire thing. Skin impressions, every bone. It's like it just got smashed between two rocks, and it's all there. All the integument, all the feathers, all the scales, the weird beak, everything in its place. You're like, what? Like, it's like, it's not even cool looking. It's just really bizarre. And you look at it like, how could that possibly, look it up, Psittacosaurus. Like, why has this got this vertical, like upside down broom on the end of its tail that sticks like straight up of like feathers that have no branching veins? It's just like the core of the feather, which is like what evolves first. Yes, it's just weird, but not that you could hit anybody with. It'd be like for brushing your floor with or sweep it up, maybe. Why is this feature for? Yeah. So we know
some stuff, I guess. So it's not just survival for evolution; it's also mate selection, right? So maybe that was
theoretically, probably, most likely,
impressing females, right?
Maybe. We don't know. We know almost nothing about the color of these things. But if you look at the living dinosaurs, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
You know, in mate selection, in ornamental display features, and males have all sorts of rituals. They're more colorful and they do little dances, and it's a lot of that. Yeah. Why would their ancestors not have also done that? And they also had feathers. It appears likely that feathers evolved that flight was a secondary thing, that feathers almost certainly evolved first as a form of insulation, because you have warm-blooded dinosaurs living in cold climates. So feathers are very good. Down in particular is a super good insulation. That's why we use it in pillows and blankets and stuff, doesn't it? It's really good at that. So feathers evolved from scales for insulation, and then later on, eventually culminating in flight. But even in like dromaeosaurs that had a lot of feathers, we know that they had feathered forearms and stuff, but they certainly couldn't fly. And we know they had on their tail, they would have had a plume at the end. And best guess is aerodynamic steering at high speeds. If you have air brakes, if you are a pursuit predator running really at top speed, chasing something out you want to eat, if your arms are folded back, no drag. If you need to take a hard right and be ultra maneuverable, if you throw your left arm out, expose those feathers, you create drag on one side, but not on the other side. And you swing that big tail with that tail plume, you can steer. You can make hairpin turns and be more maneuverable than you could. You could use them for literally steering on the ground by just like an airplane. What's it do when you come in for a landing? Puts those flaps up. What's that do? Creates drag to slow you down. Air brakes. If you have that, you could do that on what happens when the airplane's flying in the air and they just up the ailerons on one side. Plane, you lift the aileron on the left side, plane turns right. That's how planes steer. Those dromaeosaurids on the ground are going to do the same thing. You just throw that wing out, create drag on one side, not on the other side. You turn your whole body and you can, that sort of super maneuverability. You see that in like cheetahs and stuff even today. If you watch footage of them, slow motion footage of them, and they're trying to make a fast turn, they'll swing the tail out to the opposite side and kind of create that momentum to get that, to help create that turn by swinging inertial mass to the outside to pivot. And so, man, if they had you could do that with like a little feathered arm, and you could literally create drag on one side and help you steer in super fast pursuit. And then eventually this leads to birds and flight.
Well,
but all those intermediate, how did birds evolve flying and all this anatomical stuff? It's like, well, first insulation, and then later for rudimentary steering on the ground and aerodynamics, land-based aerodynamics, and then probably from there gliding and then flying.
Well, and pterosaurs weren't even birds, right? They weren't even dinosaurs.
No. Only 3 lineages of vertebrates have ever evolved flight independently. And it's only flight in vertebrates. In insects is a separate matter, but in vertebrates, flight's only evolved 3 times in all the history of life on Earth. And that is pterosaurs, birds, and bats. All independently evolved in different ways. Pterosaurs are archosaurs, so they are archosaurs like dinosaurs and crocodiles. So a pterosaur is more closely related to a crocodile than it is to a bat. Bats independently evolve a very similar, but not exactly the same, where you have like your hand bones in a pterosaur. Or in a bat, it's basically, if you look at a bat's wing, you just see all its fingers, and then the fingers get really long, and then there's membranes between them. So they have, their thumb is basically like their single functional digit they can grab with, and the other 4 fingers are all connected by, they're super, super creepy long with membranes creating a wing. Pterosaurs is a similar thing, but it's only one big membrane with one finger. In a pterosaur, all their other digits in their hand are still there, and it's their pinky finger. Just the pinky. So when you look at that long ass bone that goes in some of these things, in like as dark in pterosaurs, you might have like a 30-foot wingspan because you got a 12-foot long pinky bone. Your pinky is the flight finger. It's not all of it. It's just your pinky gets so big, and so long that it creates a single membrane that goes all the way to your back leg. So it's similar to a bat in that it's attached to what's meant to your hand, but only to the pinky finger.
Here, I look at this. Can you see this?
Yeah, Psittacosaurus. Yeah, what the hell?
It's the dumbest looking dinosaur.
The dumbest looking thing you ever saw. What is the point of that? The comb on a tail. What is the point of that? Other than maybe it was a display feature because it couldn't have had a practical purpose.
It's so dumb looking.
And if you look up the fossil of that, we have multiple fossils of that species, but one of them is so unimaginably well preserved that all of that, there's no question that's what it looked like. They didn't get it wrong because it's all in place. It's literally just like that smashed between a rock. It's crazy how well it's preserved. It's like, so.
It's the dumbest looking dinosaur I've ever seen.
Probably a display feature, and it's probably bigger or more. You have a couple of them. You don't know if you have males or females. Like, is it something that's big in males and small in females or differently colored? Probably something like that. There's no reason. If you look at how weird birds are now with their colors, how colorful they are, and the trend lines where males are more colorful and have more display features. And you think of what we think of as dinosaurs, they're almost certainly were weirder than we're thinking they are. They're almost certainly were more weird looking than we think they are. Because everybody thinks of them as like, well, even this. So it's like, oh, it's grayish green. Probably not. I mean, there are brown and gray and black birds for sure, but look at all the other birds. Look at how many colorful birds there are.
Yeah. It probably looked like a damn rainbow.
A lot of birds are, they might be fairly drab, and then there'll be like a splash of something, a bright red on a black bird with a bright blue and white head, or a lot of that. They're probably like that, and that you'd have that integument could be whatever color, and we really don't have. There are a few fossils that preserve traces of keratins and things, so we have some idea what color a couple of specimens were, but not much. But even that, it's like figuring out what color an animal was in life that's been dead for 100 million years. It's pretty amazing that we can ever figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, that's what,
you can't.
That makes me wonder, like, God, how long were snakes around? And we'll just never know because of how tiny and delicate they are.
Yeah, you can only establish the minimum age. Like, well, we know for sure by 100 million years ago they were there, and there was multiple species of them. But if there's multiple species of them, that means they'd already been around for long enough to have diverged into multiple species in different and be distributed over a larger area, which means the origin is before then, but it gets very murky. You don't know. And molecular clock estimates are cool, but they're not totally. I mean, the molecular clock estimate for when did pythons evolve is 45 million years. And last year they found a 47 million year old fossil that is absolutely a python and is perfectly preserved. It's really 2 million years older than pythons are supposed to be. What are the odds that specimen was like the first python ever? Probably not. It's probably that the calibration of the molecular clock is not entirely accurate, and they predate that because you never find the first of something or the last. So they're probably not much older than 50 million years old, but probably maybe a little bit, maybe a few more million years even before that. It's impossible to know.
Well, yeah, and imagine how tiny they potentially could have been, and that just makes it so much more difficult, right?
Yeah, smaller things just fall apart even faster. Smaller things get eaten. If you have a dinosaur and it dies, and it's let's say some sort of titanosaur, and its femur is 7 feet long, and the femur bone alone weighs 900 pounds. It's probably going to still be around. Nobody's going to eat that bone, but a little tiny snake, a basal python's only this long. Some bird's going to just eat the whole thing in one bite. It's a dead snake, or eat the whole thing and shit it out. There's going to be nothing left. It's preservation bias in a lot of contexts. The bigger the bones are, the more likely they are to, when you find small things, it's probably because they were numerous on the landscape, and there was so many of them that something got preserved. Bigger things, we have a lot of titanosaur fossils, but there would have never been very many of them because they're too huge to have a huge population of them. But they preserve well because their bones are so big that they're gonna hold up. So
yeah, it's like the human footprints that we find. It's like, how is that even possible? Like, could you imagine like walking down the beach and just thinking like, oh, this footprint's going to be here in whatever 20,000, 40,000 years?
It's got to be. I mean, every day on this planet, there are billions of footprints made by everything on Earth. And once in a while they get preserved, these trackways, but it's got to be really, really particular. The composition of the soil the footprint was made in and the conditions. A lot of times it's like footprints are made in soft sediment of the right type, usually like a lakeshore type environment, oftentimes. And then some wind-blown sand will blow in and it'll fill them in. And then that disparity in soil type, and that's what does it. And then fast forward however long, and then that secondary softer wind-blown sand, even if it forms concretions, that erodes out at a faster rate than what you made, and then you end up with a trackway. I went a couple years ago. I went to St. George, Utah, which is a beautiful place. If anybody ever wants to go to St. George, Utah, it's like another planet. I don't know why they don't film science fiction movies there. It's like you're on freaking Mars. It's weird looking. The rocks. But it's basically like the dinosaur footprint capital of the universe. There are dinosaur footprints all over the place.
Yeah.
Like all over the place. There's a museum and they just built it on top of this giant slab of rock that has like, I don't know, 150 different dinosaurs footprints from different, not even all from the same time, all these different species. It's hard to really know what species made from a footprint.
Yeah.
In most cases, but it's crazy. There's a little bit of parkland not far from the main part of town, and me and the friend I went with, and we like found some in the wild. There's like, oh, you follow signs, there's supposed to be some dinosaur tracks in there, and they're just not even preserved. They're just out in the wild. No one had excavated them.
That's crazy.
And when I figured out where they're supposed to be, I saw the edge of one, and so we're on our hands and knees just like scooping the sand out of a theropod tracks that were like this big from some big ass theropod. And then you found the one, and then you saw part of another one, but you're able to like, okay, if this one's here and they're alternating right, left, you can see how far these two are apart. You can estimate where the next track from the left foot should be. Went and dug there, uncovered like 5 of them. Like, wow. They're just out there in the wild. There's so many of them, they didn't bother to dig them up or preserve. There's just that many of them because conditions in this place were just perfect for that to, and they're pretty well preserved. I think we found tracks out in that park area of 2 different species. But yeah, we had to kind of dig them out with our hands.
Jeez. Yeah, me and my wife went to a
we knew they were place. There. We didn't discover them randomly.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's like
they're so commonplace that people have already discovered them and forgotten about them.
It's like there's like on the little brochure, it's like, oh, they go down follow this trail. There's like some dinosaur footprints near the bottom, and you found like there was like I think it was an ankylosaur and some rather large theropod. Like it wasn't a small, it was a big theropod.
There's a similar place in Colorado near Red Rocks, I think. I can't remember, but they were apparently like taking these giant rocks out the side of a mountain to keep trucks from riding off roads, and they're pulling them off, and they have dinosaur footprints on them. And they're all same thing. They're all over the place, and some of them are, it's this giant footprint with the little baby footprints inside of it because the baby was running behind the parent. And you see that and you're like, oh my God, that's so insanely epic,
There are a few places where you see that kind of thing where you can actually infer behavior of an event that happened in deep time from the footprints. God. Where you can see there's places where you can see what looks like, are these herbivores? And then there's a theropod kind of tracking them and stalking them off to the side. Like you can see that. There is, I think it's in the footprints they discovered in White Sands, New Mexico, which may or may not indicate human presence in the New World 22,000 years ago, well before we thought.
Yeah.
And they're obviously human footprints. There's no question about it. And they're so detailed that like you can see this group of people walking through, the edge of this lakeshore or whatever it was at the time. And you can see like kids running around. Their children are walking with them and the kids are running around, fucking around, chasing each other, playing grab ass. And you can see that these kids 20-something thousand years ago messing with each other. And you can see where like, oh, mom picked up one of the kids and the footprints disappear and then eventually put the kid down to pick up. You can see this small moment in the lives of these people 20,000 years later by the footprints that just accidentally got, and there's giant sloth footprints and other things in that same, this is where they're walking. And you can see that even infer elements of behavior from a trackway. So that's
don't you, it's kind of sad. It's like, it's so cool, but it's kind of sad at the same time. Like I wish that we could know more about them and the way that they lived. It's just sucks that there's no historical record.
Yeah, prehistory sucks for that, doesn't it? It's even called prehistory. It's like it's
all guessing.
You can learn a lot, but you're stuck with only what preserved and not, knowledge is hard to gain and easy to lose.
Yeah.
Things get invented and then they get forgotten and then they get reinvented. And this kind of stuff happens just as it does in biology with structures like eyes and things we're talking, they evolve, then devolve, then re-evolve differently. That happens with technologies with people.
Yeah.
People don't realize, like, people who invented metallurgy, and people always try to tell you it was somebody in the Middle East in the Bronze Age, and it absolutely wasn't. It was Native Americans in Minnesota. Like
really?
Like 3,000 years before anybody in the Middle East figured out what copper was and that you could work with it, you had what is referred to as the old copper culture in the upper Midwest, in mainly Minnesota. In that area, there is a lot of copper. It's literally laying on the ground, just laying on the ground. You can find chunks of native copper just laying around, and the native people figured out how to work it into jewelry and tools. Later, their evidence, there are ancient mines where native people were mining for copper, smelting it and making copper tools. The Copper Age is like 3,000 years older than people realize this, but it's Native Americans in like Minnesota doing it. And then something happened and they lost that technology. Then there's no copper it just goes away. Like something happened with these people, that technology gets lost. They had already lost copper. Copper technology was invented there and was lost there before it was figured out by anybody else in any other part of the world. It had already come and gone. Smelting iron. The first evidence for smelting iron is sub-Saharan Africa, sub-Saharan West Africa.
Really?
Yeah, they figured out how to smelt iron, which is way harder. It has to get way hotter. It's way more difficult. And then it got essentially forgotten and then rediscovered again. And so you see that, like there's an iron dagger in Tutankhamun's tomb, like a ritual dagger that's made out of iron before the Iron Age.
Yeah.
Where did they get it from? Turns out a meteorite. It's meteoritic iron because you could tell by how much nickel there is in it. It was from an iron nickel meteorite. And out in the Egyptian desert, if a meteorite hits the ground, it kind of tends to just sit there because there's not a lot of active geology or erosion. And they had found this metal meteorite and was able to fashion it because they didn't really have to smelt it so much because you have to get it out of ore. It just was that. And they were able to fashion this dagger and they were able to test the composition of, this is made out of a meteoritic iron. So the technology can, just like biological features can come and go and come back, technological innovations come and then sometimes go away and then have to get figured out.
What, just thinking about that, what about the scaleless morph in snakes? Is that tapping into something, or is it just a random mutation that we've selected for now?
Now you're turning off you're turning something off. It's not a gain of function. It's not an atavism. It is just, you're breaking a really important thing and it's not good for the snake. It's not. There are two types of scaleless snake mutations, and they are scaleless snakes that still have ventral scales. And usually they'll still have belly scales and then like a few random scales in the body. There's that type. And then there's the completely scaleless type that have no scales whatsoever. The scaleless snake mutations that have ventral scales can do okay. And that's why you see there's no such thing as a scaleless corn snake. I hate to break it to people. They're just all hybrids because the original scaleless animal wasn't a corn snake. But like anybody finds any sort of weird mutant in any other rat snake, they immediately hybridize it into a corn snake. It's why all your corn snakes are all hybrids. It's a lost cause. It's like they've just hybridized so many other species for morphs. Yeah. And it was a Great Plains rat snake, I believe, where the scaleless gene came from, and they bred it into corn snakes because, of course, they did, because the hobby can't have nice things. And that's why aliens won't, and we're irresponsible as a group, and that's why aliens won't talk to us. Because we're just not responsible enough to handle it, I guess.
We're gonna get to aliens.
We can't even. Yeah, there we go. But that's it. It's like, so that type of scaleless mutation can get along, and that's why scaleless corns exist. The other type doesn't do well. And I can't remember there's a rattlesnake that has a scaleless mutation that throws both types, that some have ventral scales and some don't. And it's just been kept alive in low numbers by the ones that do have ventral scales, because the ones that don't never live long enough to reproduce. Jeez. Which is why you've never seen a picture of a scaleless ball python sitting on a clutch of eggs, because they are the second type. They don't have ventral scales. They don't have anything. And they don't live very long.
Do you think that like selecting for that is...
I had friends who were trying to buy into that project. It's going to be a shit show. They don't got any ventral scales. It's not going to live very long. Everybody wants to believe what they want to be true. And right on that one.
Yeah.
They have skin problems. Basically, their skin is fucked up. Snakes, if there's something wrong with their skin, it will trigger a shed cycle. Because when you have a wound or whatever and your snake sheds, it gets noticeably better after the shed, doesn't it? Every time it sheds, the skin repairs. And so if there's a skin issue, they'll go into rapid sheds. They'll shed to repair the damage to the skin. So if you have a snake that's genetically broken and it has no freaking scales at all, doesn't get more broken skin than no scales whatsoever, what happens? Snake goes into shed. You might get 1 or 2 meals into it and you're lucky, and then it goes into shed. It's just in this endless death spiral of shed. And you're just trying to get as much calories in as you can, because as soon as it sheds, it's going to go into blue the next. It's going to be perpetually shedding. And that's why you don't see, no one ever talks about scaleless ball pythons anymore.
Yeah.
And every picture you've ever seen of one was a baby.
You think that's unethical?
Yes. Yes, yeah. I do. I think it's like at some point, it's not cool for the snake anymore. Why would you want one?
No, I don't fucking want one.
Have you ever spent any time with a scaleless bearded dragon?
No.
It is animal cruelty. And I'm not some like total weenie about that stuff. Like, I'm not like trying to tell people what to do. But if you've ever really looked at like older scaleless bearded dragons, it's a shit show. They all look like they have skin cancer. People are rubbing them down with lotion. Their toes are falling off. It's this is not cool for the snake. Look at a freaking dead zombie, undead bearded dragon with have its toes missing. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? It's like, at some point, it's not good. It's not cool for the animal. Like, if you're going to make a spider ball python or a jaguar carpet or any of the other versions, or a scoria boa, because newsflash, scoria boa is the same thing as a spider ball, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Those animals, they're not in pain. Having a neurological deficit, that they seem to be completely unaware that they're doing that. It's like, it's not painful. It doesn't seem to cut their lives short. They eat, they grow, they shed, they breed. They do all their basic things. They seem unaware that they're doing it. It's like, I don't know, I would consider that to be some sort of animal cruelty. Though even I struggle, like, should we be making these things? Like, yeah. But it's clearly not like on the same level as a freaking scaleless snake. I'm like, come on, guys.
There's degrees to it too, right? Like more or less, some are really bad.
Oh, with the neurological deficits and some of those in that family of mutations? Yes, but it's not like you can't selectively breed. Well, I'm only going to breed the ones that aren't that wobbly. It doesn't work like that. It's expressed as a spectrum, and the most non-wobbly ones might make a baby that's a complete train wreck, or vice versa. It's not something you can nail down. So you're never going to separate it. I have found over the years that your husbandry can definitely make a difference, in that it's tied to their adrenal gland output and their fight or flight response. The more environmental stressful stimuli they're exposed to, the more likely they are to manifest these neurological symptoms. So you'll see a correlation with latitude. Like people, I'm much more versed with the carpet python, but if you talk to people with the ball python version and everything else, you'll see that people that live in like Texas have more problems than people that live in Washington, where I live. Why? Heat stress. Everybody in Texas has the same exact snake room. It's always their single car attached garage that has no insulation, and it gets 1,000,000 freaking degrees in the summertime because a lot of houses don't have basements. So your room gets uncomfortably warm for them, and it stresses them out, and they get all gurked out and stuff because of that stress, or are more likely to show that. where you get to more northern in like Europe and where I'm at in more northerly latitudes, you don't really have that. You have much less of a problem with overheating that you can't do much about. And so you don't see so much of it. There's like 3 or 4 jags behind me. In that baby wreck, none of them ever done anything. You never know they were jags to look at them. Now, will they always be like that? Probably not. Will they ever display symptoms? Almost certainly. Will it be severe? Will it be mild? Probably mild. Could it be severe? Yeah, it depends on a whole lot of factors, some of which we don't understand very well, and a lot of it's husbandry related. So you can mitigate that by minimizing environmental stress, in particular heat stress. And the other most stressful thing a snake endures is the breeding season. Nothing is more stressful for a snake than the breeding season. And when I see symptoms from that, it's usually like, she did finally pass away at like 16 or whatever years old. It was the first ever super caramel tiger jag that I think anybody'd probably produce. An amazing looking animal. And she did not have even the slightest indication. I was looking for her. This snake was rock solid until she laid her 3rd clutch of eggs at like 7 years old. She lays clutch number 3 and then got goofy. But the stress of breeding and ovulating and all of that probably contributed to that. It wasn't a coincidence. The timing, I doubt, was a coincidence. That environmental stress and at a molecular level, they have an impaired ability to deal with that stress, and this is what happens. And she remained a bit goofy for the rest of her days. I think I retired her for, 6-7 years. Then I brought her out of retirement for one final clutch because I needed what she possessed for a project. And then, she lived quite a bit longer than that. But
is the stress of the breeding season, is that from the fasting and not having food? Is it from the temperature drop? Is it from being paired up and having to share resources and space with another animal? Is it the actual act of breeding itself? Is it the ovulation? Or is it all of the above?
Yes, it's all of that. Think about males combating with other males and courting females. You know how many times I put a male in with a female and the female's first response was to bite and try to kill him? Happens all the freaking time. Every time I do a round of introductions, at least one female will try to kill the male. Usually they let him go. But at least once a week, I have to forcibly separate and try to introduce them slow behind a piece of cardboard if the female's real aggressive. And once they get, okay, you're not food that. But I've got a Macklot's python female that's the Black Widow, man. She's killed her last 2 mates.
Really?
Yeah, she's laid 4 clutches, but the male she made 3 of those clutches with, she killed him.
Oh, no.
And then I got another male. And then I didn't see her kill him, but he died under mysterious circumstances. I put him in, I took him out, and then he just died. I know she got him. Oh. Now I've got another male in there with him. And I'm I'm worried about him. I'm kind of I got to be really careful when I introduce him because she's just as likely to kill him. And that's not all that uncommon. So that's really stressful. If you're a little male and there's a big angry female, stressful.
Yeah.
Wrestling with other males, stressful. All of it is stressful.
Do you ever bulk your males up to be able to...
Snakes are going to be stressed when they're copulating. Why? Because they're vulnerable. Just that vulnerability when you're doing those things makes you more stressed. So,
do you ever bulk your males up so they can be more, be able to survive the encounter more efficiently?
Not really. It's not... The number of times I've had females kill males, it's probably fewer than 10. But it's definitely a real number. I have had, it happens. It's some species, like olive pythons, can be a bit ophiophagous or snake eating. And you got to really watch that stuff. Ring pythons are like that. Obviously Papua and Apodora are like that. One that people don't realize is really like that, Antaresia. They're murdery little things. I have had 4 adult pygmy pythons die, and every single one of them was murdered. None have died of natural causes.
Wow.
I had a male kill another male. I had a female kill a male. I had a female kill and eat the male. Literally ate him.
Jeez.
Yeah, she ate him and then spit him back up like 4 days later. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you got to really watch them. Make sure once the male crawls over the female, it's like, oh, okay. And then they figure it out. But if you just toss them in there real fast, they might just immediately just grab. It's like, oh crap. Like, and they'll eat other snakes and stuff. So you got to watch this stuff a little bit. I think this happens to people more. People are just reticent to talk about the disasters.
Now, hopefully that'll be the first snake I produce is maculosa.
You've never bred snakes before?
No, man. You know that. We've talked.
Really? It's so weird to me.
Don't shame me, Nick. Not everybody gets an early start like you.
But I don't know. You talk like an old timer.
Do I really?
You kind of come across like a guy. You seem more seasoned and experienced, just the way you talk and conversationally about.
I've had snakes, ever since I moved out of my parents' house, but I've never reproduced them. Eric Burke didn't reproduce until he was in his 30s, so don't shame me, Nick.
I'm not shaming you. Better late than never. Welcome to the party. Are you breeding some spotted pythons?
Yeah, that's my goal is the striped spotted pythons. That is my goal, but now I'm nervous that they're going to eat each other.
You haven't put them together yet?
No, I'm not. I'm waiting. It's going to be probably like 2 more years. I don't know. How old are they until I can breed them?
You can breed them at 2 years.
Oh, then I could have bred them last year.
How big if you had to compare the body diameter of the female to a coin, like a dime, a quarter, a nickel, what would it be?
Probably I would say probably a nickel or maybe larger.
You probably could have bred them this year.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, when you get about 250 grams, you can breed a female spotted python without any problems.
Dude, she's that easy. She is.
Yeah, and males can breed at like 60 grams. So
I actually weighed her. And I can tell you exactly. So, but now you've got me a little bit worried with this whole, eating each other.
I will say that spotted pythons are probably the least cannibalistic of the Antaresia. But
well, that's good.
They'll definitely do it though. But usually when I've seen it, it's babies eating babies. A lot of breeders, out of simplicity for their lives, snakes don't really eat until after their first shed. So people tend to like a clutch will hatch. And they'll just keep the whole clutch together till they shed, and then they'll set them up individually after they shed. So they house them communally. You never want to do that with Antaresia because they will eat each other. I have had this is like terrible stories that make me look like a dumbass, I realize. But you know what? Like, as much as I don't think I'm a dumbass now, I definitely used to be. Like, for sure, I was a newbie dingling like everybody else, learning the hard way. And one of those early lessons was with granite spotted pythons. So I had a clutch of granites and het granites. And this might have been 20 years ago. But they're all communally. And I go in there and there's one dead baby just kind of crumpled up in the corner. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Like, that's weird. I wonder what happened. So did I separate them? No. I just pulled the dead baby out. Then the next day, there's another dead baby.
Oh no, Nick.
And I'm thinking, is this a weak clutch? Are they all just dying? What's going on? And I threw out the dead one and I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Then I go out there, I checked on them like 2 days later, and there's one baby granite that has completely swallowed one of its. I found the murderer. This time it actually managed to swallow its sibling.
Jeez.
And then I separated it out, and then it regurgitated the one that it ate, and then it died. So the murderer killed 3 of its siblings and then died as a result of its own gluttony. But I lost almost half a clutch to cannibalism. I've also early on had a Simpsons python clutch where that happened, where one killed another one. So definitely, when you breed them, keep the babies, separate them immediately. Don't mess around with that because they will kill each other and try to eat each other.
So so my female back in October of 25, she was 211 grams.
Yeah, you could have made a go for it. I mean, that's a little small for a spotted, but the difference between 211 grams and breeding them was just like feed her a mouse every 7 days during the breeding season. And by the time you get to the end of it, she'll be big enough. You could have just feed her a mouse once a week. Every Tuesday, you get an adult mouse. And by the end of the breeding season, you're big enough to go and you'll go. They are super
Should
easy.
I step up? I mean, well, she eats every other week during the warmer months. And then during the winter, she's eaten only maybe like, twice. I would say maybe once.
I would pump those numbers up. I would create a food cycle. What I would do is, feed regular through the summer. And then as you get to the fall and the last couple 3 months before you start your temperature cycling, bump it up to once a week and increase the prey size. So you get this influx of calories, and that can actually initiate folliculogenesis as well. So the temperature cycle can initiate that. The food cycle, this influx of calories, can initiate folliculogenesis. And if you time the two together, you've got everything pulling towards that, and you're going to get eggs. And you're going to hatch them. And then you're like, why did I breed these things? They don't want to eat these mice. What was I thinking?
I need to get crested geckos or morning geckos.
No, I've never fed a lizard to an antaresia. I had 11 clutches of antaresia last year. I am attempting 14 clutches of antaresia this year. Why?
Oh my God, dude.
Because I hate my life. And I think that's why. I think I just hate my life. But it's... And the hard ones too. The little tiny microbe ones too. I'm attempting 6 clutches of pygmy stuff.
Why do you think I went with maculosa? I'm like, I want the biggest of the antaresia.
Yeah. The striped ones they're on the easier end of the spectrum to get feeding.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff is a little harder. Your Western stems are a little harder than your Eastern stems, but not bad. Children's are pretty easy too. By pretty easy, I say that I still have 3 from 2020. I think all my children's python clutches, I had 2 that just dead enders that didn't make it. I have 3 that are still not eating right, and they hatched in June. It's like,
jeez.
Well, I had 5 clutches of them though, so it's like of the 48 children's pythons I produced, that there were 5 total ne'er-do-wells is not unexpected.
Yeah.
I hatched 7 Perthensis. And I got 5 of the 7 going. 1's croaked, 1 I'm still assist feeding, and 5 are eating good. And that's a win, dude.
Yeah.
5 out of 7 are eating good already. Whew. It's the best I've ever done. There's a reason why they're expensive. You have to earn that one. They suck.
Why do you think that antaresia in general aren't more popular as pets? Because the size is perfect. Do you think it's because of their somewhat psychotic nature?
I don't think it's even that. I think that people have become so desensitized because of mutations that they think if it's not fluorescent orange and purple, I'm not even interested. They kind of overlook things that are a bit more subdued in color and pattern. And even though these are superior animals in all these other ways, they can't get past the fact that it's a brown snake. I want a purple snake. It's like, well, spoiler alert, your purple snake's going to be a shit brown snake in a couple of years. Actually, probably in a couple of months. It's not going to look like that. And then it's going to, it's not going to have any of this other cool stuff too. But I would say that the antaresia, I hate when these topics come up about, talking about market dynamics and that sort of stuff. And what's hot and what's not. And I think it's so trivial.
Well, it's not even that. I'm just like, how come more people don't have antaresia? Because I love them. I think that they're really cool.
Where I was going with that is to say, I have noticed an uptick in demand for base model antaresia, if that makes sense. I produce a lot of that stuff. And a lot of people, I've sold a lot of antaresia. I think I produced 87 antaresia this last year.
Wow.
And now I have 25 left. And all the rest of them, there are some that I've not attempted to sell because I'm just waiting. But I'm way ahead of the curve as far as selling the ones I produced. And it's mostly the lower price point normal children's pythons, or children's pythons I'll sell at the price point of a normal. I think, and they're almost always if it's an albino children's python or something like that, people tend to want pairs of them.
Yeah.
But if it's just a normal children's python, a spotted python, even a striped one, mostly it's people buying single animals as pets. So I think the word is out. I would say there's been an uptick in interest. The awareness is better now that these are very small, very manageable. animals. They're hardy. They live a long time. They're super easy to take care of. The babies are a pain in the ass. But if you're just as a pet, I've already done all that work for you. You know, it's like if you're not trying to breed them, they have a lot of great pet qualities. And so I think the word is out. Like I have 3 children's pythons left that aren't, I think I have like 4 albinos, but that's a whole different price point. You know, if you take away the higher end ones, like normal stuff, and even the normal ones, they're all like possible het for black. They're all possible het for this, that, or the other, but I just sell them at the price of a normal. All that stuff. There's only like 3 males left out of the whole year.
Wow.
Because people are, especially the children's pythons for some reason. I did produce a lot of spotted pythons, so I still have, I think, 8 or 9, but I produced like 20 something. So it's like, it's not like So I think they're gaining popularity. I don't think they're ever destined to be really popular because the things they lack and that cause them to be less popular, if they were to gain those things, I think it would ruin it. If there were, let's say, a couple mutations, Australians have a T negative albino spotted python that's commonly available now. Like, if that was available, what would happen in the US? Would they get more popular? Yeah. What would happen to the gene pool? They would immediately do what they always do.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to, I'm worried. I know it's going to happen. Like, eventually because there's 2 quote unquote T positive children's pythons line. Only one is a real T positive and one is not a real. It's not even, it's a figment. I have both. It's not real, but they sell them like they're real. Like, it's so not real that I actually hatched one. I have a visual male and a het female and a visual male I produce, and I don't know what to do with them. Why? I do not want to sell them because it's not really a T positive albino. I don't want to sell this visual male I produce and call it that because I think it's fraud. And I don't want to. So what? I make a couple of guys really angry by selling it for $200 or something, because that's probably all it should be. It's like, because it's not really a T positive albino. Like, it's like, so I'm kind of stuck with it. I just got
What is it?
What?
What is it?
Python.
But I mean, if it's not that, what is it?
It's just a red phase baby color. That's it.
Oh.
Just like you have red baby coastal carpets, red baby. A lot of pythons have red babies in Indo-Australian python clade. And then you ever notice you've seen a red coastal? It's not a red adult, is it? You ever seen a baby pop one carpet? Look how red it is. Oh man, it looks really crazy. Look how red it is an adult. Oh yeah, it's not red at all. You'd never guess in a million years they were red. Like, it's just that. By the time they're a year old, they look like basically nothing. Like, if I showed you a picture of my quote unquote US line T positive male, next to the het T positive female that I got with him, from 10 feet away, you can't tell them apart other than the female slightly bigger. They look the same. If I have a picture I took of a T positive male from the European line, that's a real thing, with the adult male. They're exactly the same age. They're like 3 weeks apart in age. And it's the 2 adult males sitting next to each other at the same time. And it looks like a T positive albino and a normal. You would never like, that's not. So I don't know what to do. I just got them to prove or disprove compatibility. And once I'm done with that, probably this year, I don't know what to do with them. Like, I don't want to sell them as that because I don't believe that that's what they are. And I don't want to defraud anybody. So it's like, I paid a shitload. I paid T positive money for them. I knew what they were before I got them, but someone needs to prove this stuff out. No one will do that but me. So once I'm done with that, I'm not going to. So if you want any American line T plus children's, you know a guy. Quietly. They're pretty, but the babies, unfortunately, really look very similar to an actual T plus, and then it fades away almost by the minute.
That's so weird.
Like, the baby I produced, if you put it next to a real T plus baby, it would look really similar when they hatched. Now it's eaten 8 meals and it shed 3 times and has already probably lost 30% of its appeal looks wise. It's already starting. So, but yeah, no, I don't know how I got talking about that. Oh, because you were talking about your children's or spotted pythons.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember how we got.
You were going to breed your first snakes, and they were spotted pythons, and we got rambling about it.
Oh yeah, and pet pythons. I mean, do you even think snakes should be pets, Nick? Do you think that snakes?
Well, it depends on how you're defining pets. They're more of a display animal in my, like having a fish tank. It's not really, to me, a pet is like my stupid dog who drools and farts and licks the couch till there's wet spots on the couch because it obsessively licks the couch for no reason. It's like, that's a pet. The dog cares if I'm there.
What a great pet.
I have an American Bull Terrier, so like a Spuds MacKenzie dog, and she's like 12. So she's already older than that dog was supposed to ever even live to be. It's a 1,000,000-year-old. It just like, it doesn't get around very good. It's just like, doesn't know what's going on around it half the time. It's like, it's like geriatric dogs are a lot of work, I guess. But I think that's a pet. That dog genuinely wants to hang out with me and wants to get on the couch if I'm on the couch. That's your companion animal. That's your pet. Is a snake a companion animal? It's like, maybe for some people, but I think for me that you almost have to overestimate their cognitive capability to really read too much into it. Your snake doesn't care about you. Your snake's not capable of caring about you. It's at best it thinks you're a warm, comfortable tree branch. Maybe. Like it doesn't really, they're not operating on that level. I think they're cool. I don't get overly attached to individual snakes. I've got some I've had for a long time. I've got snakes that I produced that are older than my children, who are now young adults. Like I've got 20-plus-year-old snakes. I'm trying to breed my male Queensland water python from 2005. Like he's 21 years old. I've still got my original pair from 21 years. They got babies from 21 years ago. You know, I'm trying to breed a 21-year-old jungle carpet this year.
Jeez.
I'm pairing like my 14-year-old albino olive pie. I have a lot of snakes that are well over 10 years old and a lot of snakes over 15 years old. So a lot of them have been with me a long time. But that's not
you do realize that you breed snakes, right? So you should be selling them as pets to people. That way you can sell more.
Well, yeah, I think that's what you see with growing pains the industry is going through now with the ball python apocalypse.
Yeah.
All things eventually have to achieve this sort of homeostasis balance between supply and demand. The right amount of animals are produced to satisfy the demand, but not too much over, not too much under. And that balancing point right now, that's an entire market that is catered entirely and exclusively to other breeders who then breed more snakes to sell to other breeders. Eventually, that's a very finite thing. And that's why you end up so oversaturated. They'll never achieve a stable market until a good portion of their production is just sold to people as pets that have no intention of ever breeding it and don't care. And that's what looks cool for $250 or less crowd. It's going to get there. It's already starting to get there, where you are catering to what you would deem in economic terms the end user. The person just going to buy this thing to look at it and is not going to try to propagate it and make more supply. That's the end user, the pet owner in the reptile world. And you'll get there. But it's painful for people because the market exclusively catering towards other would-be aspiring breeders that's what's tanked. The market for pet owners is almost inexhaustible, though. So they need to get through that transition. I'm fortunate, I think, in that a lot of the stuff I work with, I sell a shocking amount of like even kind of expensive carpet pythons to people that don't care about breeding them. In all my days of breeding ball pythons, I did breed probably a couple hundred clutches of them over a period of years there. Jeez. I don't think I ever sold a single snake to somebody that just wanted a pet. It was all people wanted to breed them because that was what people were doing. And like, I would say probably at least a third to half of all the snakes you see behind me are just going to go to somebody who is just going to have a pet.
Yeah.
Some of these things, these more expensive variants are definitely things that cater towards people that are going to try to breed that. But a lot of what I produce is not that. A lot of people just want a normal popwood carpet because it's awesome the way it is. And they don't care about it being het granite. They don't care about any of that other stuff. They just want a cool popwood carpet that's going to display really nice sitting on a branch and look cool in its cage. And that's the end user. So it's never been so dominated by the Australian python market. Is a lot more people that are just looking for a cool exotic pet. Not everybody's trying to breed everything. And also it's harder to breed. So even the people that want to breed it, a lot of them fail. So because you have to do at least a couple of easy things to get them to breed, whereas some of these things like ball pythons and crested geckos and some of these other things that are basically completely domesticated at this point, you just have to have a male and a female and they'll just do it. Totally non-seasonal breeding, just like this. They'll just, if you can breed something on accident, it's going to get overpopulated pretty quickly. And so that's why there are so many crested geckos, because it doesn't require any technical know-how or skill or knowledge to do. Just have a pair of crested geckos and you could probably leave the eggs in the cage and they'd probably hatch because they don't even need to be incubated. You just room temperature. Oh, the eggs hatched. It's like, if it's that easy, that's why there's a billion of them. And the balls are largely the same way. You should probably incubate the eggs, but beyond that, it's like, I've even had accidental ball python clutches watching, like, you had eggs? Like, what? Like, what was that? like when you pay attention, like, if you can do it on accident, it's too easy.
There has to be more ball pythons in captivity than out in the wild, right?
I don't know. It's really hard to.
What about crested geckos?
Oh, but definitely crested geckos.
For sure,
for
right?
Sure. Oh, probably by orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
There's probably more rough scale pythons in captivity than there are in the wild, because while as rare as they are in the wild and as limited as their habitat is, they breed really easily. Like, they're not. I've got babies behind me. It's like they're really easy to breed. They're very agreeable, at least. So I think like things like the Australian python market, I think the two factors that there's a decent percentage of people that just want these things to look at them and aren't even going to try to breed them. And of the people that try to breed them, a higher failure rate among those who try keeps things in balance. It allows that you can produce a fair few of them. They'll all find homes. Some of them are just homes for pet owners. And then some of them want to try to breed them won't even succeed. And so it stops the numbers from getting this massive overpopulation market crash dynamic that we see happening in other things. Because if everybody, even in carpets, if everybody that tried to breed them was successful, we'd overpopulate. Yeah. But you have the failure rate, and that a sizable chunk of them are just pets. And that seems to keep things in balance historically.
So now in comparison to like spotted pythons or carpet pythons, when I go to breed the female that I got from you eventually, I mean, she's a 23, so she still has probably a couple of years, right?
Depends on how much you feed it. I think 4 years old before you breed a female is pretty good. That's what I generally try for. I bred a ton of female carpets at 2.5 years old. You can definitely do that. It's not even that hard, but the older I get, I just don't care about feeding stuff that much. Like, I'm not in a mad rush to breed any one particular thing. And even when I should be, like behind me, right above my head, there's some snakes. That center rack, those top like 5 levels, those are all my holdbacks from 2025, carpet holdbacks. Jeez. In there are the only ones of their kind. There is a pair of exanthic granites. There is 4 hypomelanistic tiger coastals that are 100% het exanthic that will make the world's first and only hypomelanistic exanthic, super hypomelanistic exanthic tiger coastals. That's the parents that are going to make that snake are behind me. And do you think I'm feeding them a lot? Nope. Would it be useful if I got the males up to breeding size at 18 months and the females at 2.5? Yeah. Would anybody else with active brain cells in their head get them up to size that fast? Yeah. Will I? Doubtful. Very doubtful. I should economically, but I probably won't. It'll probably be 3 or 4 years before I get around to it.
Well, rushing them into that, is that deleterious to their health in your opinion?
There is not good data on that, but I gotta think it is.
Yeah.
I gotta think it is. I gotta believe that it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncomfortable truths about keeping and breeding reptiles that the hobby refuses to accept or deal with. And I myself for many years kept the blinders on. I'm not seeing this, that a lot of these habits we have of like just turning and burning through the filial generations of inbreeding, like just as fast as we possibly can, because we got to get those morphs built, and feeding things at this ultra accelerated rate to induce early sexual maturity and early reproduction, to stack more deleterious genes on top of each other to make more morph combos, and then it's like, this is not the way to manage a gene pool, and it's not good for the long-term health of a population or the individual. And people don't want to accept that, but it is true. Here's another truth. If you breed the crap out of a female, it's going to die young. It's going to. Males, you can get away with a lot more because the reproductive cost of reproduction on their biology and their body is much less. But a female, best case, if it's something like a ball python or an Antaresia, you can get clutch after clutch after clutch for 10, 15 years in a row. But you got to just feed them like crazy in the off season, and you're just going. All these things should be able to live 30, 40 years. Do you think the snake that you bred 12 years in a row is going to make it to 40? Because I very much doubt that it is. And with some of these other things, these other species that achieve more of an apex predator role, nature ensures a lower reproductive output over time because you don't want to overpopulate. So if you get 3 clutches out of a female carpet python or a retic or whatever in its entire life, that's all you can ever hope for. If you get 3 and none again, you've done well. That's it. You probably hit it. Because for every one that lays 5 or 6 clutches, there's one that lays 0 clutches or 1 clutch. Average is about 3. So this hammering with food, accelerated growth rate, just trying to breed. You are shaving their life. You're cutting their life down, and you're doing it for expedience and greed. I don't have the patience to wait around, and I want to get paid now. So screw this snake. I'm going to push it this hard and do this. And no one wants to own that, but I've been guilty of it. Everybody's been guilty of it, probably, if you've been doing this very long. But I think people need to have a reckoning with that, and really understand that. And maybe you still even do it because you think it's worth it to you to do that. But I think that you shouldn't be able to hide behind, I didn't know, or argue whether that's true or not, because people, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. It's totally true. It's totally true. I look around at, I know of records of carpet pythons that live 35 to 37 years. That's about the upper end of it that I'm aware of. There might be something that lived longer. I don't always get a memo every time something gets super old, but I'm aware of a couple instances in coastal carpets of some animals in their mid to late 30s. And I've never had an animal live that long. I've got some that I've had for 21 years, but they look old. And you know what would happen if I never bred them? They probably look a lot better. That immense amount of stress that you put through a female's body through to reproduce, the amount of weight that they lose and body condition they lose each time they reproduce, it's taxing. And if you keep doing that, you're shortening their lives by doing that. And maybe it's worth it to do that. I don't, but don't kid yourself. Breeding these things, feeding the hell out of your snakes, breeding them small, breeding them young, and breeding them back to back to back to back. You are killing them by doing that. You are shaving the back end of their lifespan off. You could make an argument that biologically and evolutionarily, the animal that did that was more successful, not less successful. Because in evolutionary terms, the most successful animal is not the one that lives the longest. There's no prize for longevity at all. It's how many copies of your genes that you pass along into the next generation. That's the winner. So an animal that lives 8 years, has 5 clutches in 8 years, and dies at 8 years old is vastly more successful in evolutionary terms than the animal that lived 25 or 40 years and never reproduced at all. That animal is a complete evolutionary failure. It didn't pass its genes along at all, or 1 clutch. How many copies of your genes were passed forward into the gene pool for the next generation? That's the measure of evolutionary success. So, but then you have to, I guess, balance that out with ethics, because we're people and we do that, or we should anyway. Is that strictly Darwinian definition of success? Is that applicable, or is that unethical? Because it's good for that animal's genes, not necessarily good for that individual animal itself, because its life got cut short.
Yeah.
And I think these are the discussions that you never have no one ever talks about.
Darwin and evolution and the whole theory has been thrown out the window in regards to keeping animals in captivity, right? There's no more natural selection anyway.
The basics of Darwinian evolution are absolutely always in play. However, natural selection goes out the window in favor of artificial selection.
Yeah.
In my snake building, nature doesn't select who the the fittest animal is and the fittest animals live long enough to reproduce. Nature doesn't decide that. I decide who gets to reproduce. And even if you're not that fit, I might decide to keep you alive and you get to breed anyway. So we're not reinforcing. The guardrails are off. And so you can have the advancement of deleterious genes because even though in the wild they would be ruthlessly selected against, we are intentionally selecting for them. Look at something like a spider ball python because it's so obvious, or a jaguar carpet. Let's make it fair. This is not a healthy thing. There's no way you can ever say that there was an advantage conveyed by being a spider ball python. If you look at all the ball python morphs that have existed, most of the time, there have been multiple independent wild-caught specimens where they'll find an albino and then they'll find another albino. There have been multiple pieballs, like a good handful. There's been dozens of orange ghost ball pythons out of the wild. There have been multiple albinos, multiple cinnamons, and all these things. Dozens of pastels out of the wild, different versions out of wild ancestors. That spider is not helpful. They only ever found one spider. One time. A single animal. Why? Because it's less fit to survive. Because it's wobbly. It has a disadvantage. Even if its color and pattern weren't a disadvantage, the fact that it has that deficit is less fit. It's unfit. They found one before it got killed by a bird or something, and it's still... So we are selecting... We have removed not just the guardrails of evolution in that prune the unfit from the gene pool, we are actively promoting the least fit of the gene pool in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Which is another ethical thing. Why are we always doing that? But it looks cool. It looks pretty. And it always defaults to you can't tell me what to do with my snakes. It's like, I can actually tell you what to do with your snakes. You don't have to listen, though. That's the thing. It's like, I can say whatever I want, and you don't have to listen. You're under no obligation to do what I say. That's the thing. I can say it. And I think the hobby needs to look in the mirror and really needs to reassess its priorities. In a lot of cases, why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I keeping what I'm keeping and breeding what I'm breeding because it's what I am truly passionate about? Or am I just doing it because I think other people want to pay me for this? Because I think there's some pot of gold at the end of this ball python rainbow or whatever it is I'm doing. Or you could apply that to any aspect, anything in the hobby. Am I really following what interests me and what's good for the hobby? Or am I pursuing short-term trends that have negative impacts on the long-term health of the hobby?
Do you think that morphs are the root of all evil in the hobby? That it's like if you find somebody that's really passionate about a locality, do you think that they are more virtuous than somebody that is chasing morphs?
I'll just say it. Yeah, I do. I think that the morphs probably are the root of most of our problems and most of the shittiest aspects of this hobby. Those toxic, I hate using the word toxic because I hate using buzzwords, but the most toxic aspects of our hobby all emanate from that. It all emanates mostly from one person who shall remain forever nameless for a whole host of reasons, but who
liability.
Decided, what?
Liability.
One particular person that, finally proved out piebald ball pythons were genetic and sold the first one and listed them for sale for $25,000 a piece. Wow. And people lined up and paid that. $25,000, not in 2026 money, in 2000 money, a quarter century ago. It's a lot, that kind of massive amount of money. That's when this really just kicked into ludicrous territory. And people only care about, since then, that's what, morphs are the only thing that matter. Morphs drive everything. But morphs leads to bad decisions, bad practices, deleterious genes, unhealthy animals, greed, and stupidity. That's where that goes. Most of those problems goes back to that. What have we done? What has been the effect of that? Look at other groups that aren't ball pythons. Look at short-tail pythons. You got 3 species. You had localities. You had all this. They're really variable. Cool. Does any of that stuff exist anymore? No. What do you have? Morphs. Do you know how hard it was for me to find a pair of Borneo short-tail pythons that weren't morphs? It was
you did find
shockingly difficult. Yeah, it was damned difficult. They're all morphed out. Because why would you care unless it was a morph? What was even the point of keeping one if it wasn't going to be a morph? No point in even doing it. Find a blood python. You can find blood pythons that aren't morphs, but even they're selectively bred to not really be so natural looking. They're a bit too nice looking. But we used to have 2 locality populations of blood pythons in this country. Now, one of them seems to be the most unique one seems to be completely lost.
Which one is that?
Toba, Lake Toba.
I heard that that's actually a morph.
It's both.
Okay. Yeah, my buddy Sean Perry told me that after we talked last time.
I don't give a shit about the morph. It's a locality, Lake Toba, and then there is a morph, the Toba morph. Not all the animals from Lake Toba are the morph. Some of them are. The first animals, there were normal ones from Toba and the morph animals from Toba. What happened? All the normals got bred to morphs. There are seemingly no wild type Toba locality bloods in the hobby anymore. The morph exists, bred to every other thing on the sun, because all we care about is the morph. We don't care about the other things.
There's also Bankas.
Yes, I almost given up hope on finding those, and then last time we were talking, I ranted on in public about it, and an old friend of mine back east actually has a pair, and he's putting them together this year. I'm like, you put me down for a pair of those, and I don't even like blood pythons, but I'll get those.
My friend just
because
got some...
that's his. I want to. Someone needs to keep that going. We've already lost the more unique one of the 2, frankly, but we've lost that and lose the last one. To just
my buddy Sean just got, I believe, a pair or a trio of Bankas that I believe are wild caught or imported. So they're still out there.
It is so ridiculous that I'm literally at the point where I'm like, I have connections in Indonesia, and the biggest Indonesian reptile farm operation is sort of run by a friend of mine. And I'm like, do I need to really press my advantage and get him to get me some wild ones again? And how shitty is that of an indictment of our hobby is that? Wild caught blood pythons are not always the easiest thing to get established, and they're not the easiest thing to always breed. Captive bred ones do really well. But to have had them well established and then just dicked it off completely for the sake of morphs, to the point I got to start all the way over from scratch with wild caught ones again. Yeah. It's like, it's ridiculous.
I think that as time goes on, we realize how important these things are, right?
Because we obsess about the trivial and we lose sight of what's really cool and important. And then when what's important is gone and you can no longer get it all, then we lament, oh man, I sure wish I could get a Lake Toba blood python. It's like, well, you had them and you just dicked it off because you're too busy making, I don't know, golden eye T positive bullshit, whatever. I mean, it's like you were too busy about that. It's not like they went away because, we just couldn't get them to breed and they're really hard to get feeding. It was like, nope, they went away because nobody could be bothered to do it. It was easy and no one could be bothered. Just not worth my time. That's why it's gone. Just not worth my time. I got to make these T negatives or T positive, whatever. That's what I want to do. It's like, and you can't tell me what to do with my snakes.
Why. I think if I ever get a ball python again, it will be a locality ball python from Dr. Stephen Tillis. I think he's one of the few people that have an actual locality.
It's crazy. Ball pythons, all the pet trade ones come from this really small area geographically. Benin,
so I guess they are
Togo.
A locality.
Well, this sort of Ghana, Benin, Togo, little tiny bit right there. But if you look at I did a range map for ball pythons. One of these days I'm going to put out this giant ass book, but I'm doing the research for that.
Are you making a ball python book?
No, but I'm slowly in the background. I have 2 book projects. The Aspites book is nearing. It exists. There is a book that is written on the Aspites genus. It exists. It needs refinement. It needs tweaks. It needs amendments. It's all the chapters except for the introduction exist.
Yeah.
Some of them are completely done. Others need input on this, that, or the other, but it's mostly there. Most of the images are gathered. It's an advanced state of completion. And then in the background, there's this other long-term life's work sort of book project that slowly simmers in the background. That will cover.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that last time.
It will cover every species, but I have to deal with ball pythons. So I've done a range map, and ball pythons actually make it all the way into Ethiopia in East Africa. Really? All the way, basically the Sahara Desert, and then the Savannah belt, were between right at the base of the sand. Then you get the strip of Savannah right up as it abuts the Sahara, all the way across from coast to coast, across the whole damn continent. You got ball pythons, but all the ones that penetrate come from the west coast, that small area of West Africa. I would love to see what an Ethiopian ball python looks like.
Yeah,
it's a long ass ways away. I would love to see what that looked like from all these other places, which, you're never going to get one because there's no infrastructure for exporting animals in those places, and nobody cares because who's going to want to import a ball python from Ethiopia anyway? It's because it's not a morph. If there was demand, it might be possible, but there's no demand. But I would love to see.
Have you ever thought about maybe going
I would make
over
room in
there
my collection for a pair of ball pythons, but only if they were absolute weird locality ones that had nothing to do with the morph at all. Like that would be just wild type from a particularly known locality.
That's what I want. I have no interest in a morph, but what if you go to Ethiopia and you collect them yourself? That would be pretty cool.
A lot of that, you get into like international law, CITES treaty obligations. Yeah. A lot of like developing countries don't have an infrastructure for exporting wildlife, even if it's not expressly illegal. It's just you're into a lot of difficulty in a lot of places. Sometimes it's just like, sometimes they don't export because no one ever asks. No one ever thought to ask. It's not always impossible, but it's like there's no infrastructure. Like there's no collectors. There's no infrastructure for that. In West Africa, there's a well-oiled infrastructure for exporting ball pythons. And that's where they tend to come from. Anywhere else would be vastly more difficult. And if there's no real financial impetus for somebody to get that off the ground, it doesn't happen. And in this case, there isn't. So.
Is it true that Angolan pythons are more closely related to rock pythons than they are ball pythons?
Yeah.
That's nuts, because they look like ball pythons.
They don't, though. Have you ever owned one?
Yeah, they look like a bumpy ball python.
Have you ever owned a rock python?
No, of course not.
Yeah, it's when you have
you knew the answer to that.
When you have African rock pythons, you're like, oh yeah, they're actually more closely related to southern African rock pythons, Python natalensis. But they independently evolved to be small. They are not related to ball pythons in any meaningful way. But ball python people, they're related to ball pythons, so I should hybridize them and do stupid stuff again. It's like,
I love how this guy, this asshole breeder that you always like make fun of is always from the South. He's like from like maybe Louisiana or Georgia.
I'm not actually picturing, I don't know who the first person to do that particular dumb thing was. I'm not like, in my mind, I'm not beating up on any particular individial. It seems like
he's like, here we go. I'm about to hybridize.
Stupid.
You could do Angolan to ball python to blood python, right?
Yeah. Doesn't mean you should.
So cool.
It's like this is stupid with an exponent. That's stupid to the third power. Like, it's like, I saw people do it, they always try to come up with like a fancy, sexy sounding name for something stupid. Yeah. It's like, it's an angry ball. It's like, nope, It's stupid. I saw somebody they've done something, they refer to it as tribrids instead of hybrids. Oh, because it's three species. Oh man, doesn't that sound noble and interesting? Nope.
It does sound dumb. Cool. Tribrid, that sounds badass, dude.
Stupid. Stupid.
I want me a tribrid.
What are you doing? Like, what the hell? What are you like? Is it not enough? If you look at the depth and breadth and diversity of pythons all around the world, is that not enough for you? If you look at the amount of variation within any species, that's not enough. Oh, you need to have everything's got to be mutant. And then that's still not enough. I got to bring it to another species because it wasn't enough. You couldn't make enough. Think about the insanity of that. Like, disregard all the natural variability that occurs in ball pythons, but all the mutant varieties of ball pythons that are still 100% ball python. There's not enough variety in how they look within all of that you needed to breed to an Angolan python. Like, what? I just something's just missing. I don't know. Like, what? What are you doing? I just got to breed this berm to this ball python, which I keep seeing a bunch of.
Berm balls are pretty dope, dude. They are pretty dope.
I think you spelled stupid wrong. I think you meant to say that's stupid. Like, what? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Berm balls give me the next big thing. As I very much doubt that. Like,
I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't want to own a hybrid, but it is cool looking at them on the internet.
It's also interesting to look at photos of plane crashes and stuff too. We're kind of programmed to look at freaky, weird, disturbing things. Yeah. We're like, oh, we can't help but look. It's like, but it doesn't mean
we're also programmed to always want more too. And I think that answers your question of why can't we be satisfied?
Because we're just programmed to always want more.
Yeah,
we're never satisfied.
Yep,
which is very unsatisfying. It's kind of like
it's so unsatisfying that we can't be satisfied.
How
many Corvettes do you have, Nick?
Sort of just a couple, but with a caveat. But, if I had another garage, I'd probably have more.
Of course.
It makes me happy.
Yeah.
I've made some good progress on my wide body front fenders. I've actually gotten working on my 5th gen car again.
Hell yeah.
And I'm reworking the other car. So I'm currently actively working on 3 project cars, and 2 books, and
you're never satisfied,
and a new podcast, and your podcast apparently today, and then, man, well,
oh yeah, let's talk about that. You have a big announcement.
Yeah, I guess I am launching a new podcast with Dr. Warren Booth, who most people in the hobby are probably familiar with.
Of course,
and we recorded our first episode earlier today, actually.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty busy guy with work and writing and traveling and all the rest of the stuff. So the plan is, and Warren travels for work a lot. Almost every month he's flying off to somewhere for some conference or other. So because of our schedules, we're going to wait till we have 4 or 5 episodes done and in the can before we start to put them out every couple of weeks to get us a little bit of leeway, as far as that goes. But yeah, we started recording earlier today.
Hell yeah. What is the first episode going to be about?
I don't know.
Okay.
The first one recorded is not necessarily the first one that will air. We recorded an episode because it's me and Warren. We're pretty adept at talking, even if we don't have a guest.
Sure.
There's a lot of subjects we can just discuss amongst ourselves that we're well versed enough in. So today we discussed whole episode about inbreeding depression, and from a more technical perspective. What causes it? What is it? What is actually happening? Why is it bad? If it's bad, is it always bad? Is it sometimes good? What's going on? Like from a science perspective. And the whole goal of the podcast is to be a reptile science podcast. There are a lot of podcasts that talk to a lot of personalities, and a lot of the podcast sort of ecosystem with the reptile community is largely driven by personalities.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that personality-driven content tends to be oftentimes light on science and usable information. And so I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah. Also, you have a pretty big personality. You are one of those personalities. You know that, right? You're describing yourself.
I can neither confirm nor deny that there may be truth in that. Probably. Yeah, for sure. But I want to do a show that's different. I don't want to do what anybody else is doing. So it's like a lot of things, just like in an ecosystem, you're going to be more successful if you find a niche that no one's filling and you exploit a new niche that is not occupied. And so the sort of more hardcore reptile science podcast does not actually exist. Occasionally you might get bits of science in a podcast at a deeper level, but there's no podcast that just only exists to disseminate real detailed scientific information. And so that is what we're endeavoring to do. It will all be, most guests will be, academics, PhDs, these sorts of candidates are people talking about that, so that their research and whatnot. So one of the ones, well, I shouldn't say just in case it falls through, But a pretty good lineup of academics that have had an impact on the hobby, and so we'll be talking about some of these more not at a. And I don't mean this as a criticism, because there's value in boiling things down to like I don't say newbie is like a pejorative term, but like bringing scientific concepts down to a level that people can really get their brain around, and dumbing it down, so to speak. Sure. Because that definitely has value for some people. But I find that even when you have some real scientific stuff gets articulated in a podcast, it tends to get dumbed down probably too much. Nobody just tells it like it is. And I think that's what we're going to do. I think I think any lay person would definitely be able to follow the conversation, understand what we're talking about. So we're not trying to make it incomprehensible. But also, I don't really want to dumb things down. I think that if we constantly as a community dumb things down to the level of the dumbest person in the room, no one learns anything. Yeah. If you bring everything down to the level of the dumbest person you're talking to, no one's going to learn anything. I think it is better, in my opinion, to challenge the listener, the reader, whatever, to learn more. Like, what's wrong with being challenged? It's like, if it's just a little bit out of your comfort zone, and then you learned a thing. If you invest 2 hours into listening to a podcast, listen to me talk, I would hope you learned a thing you didn't know. Because if you didn't gain anything knowledge-wise from listening, then why did you waste 2 hours of your life listening to it? You should walk away being a little bit smarter, with a little more knowledge, having learned something for investing your time into that podcast or reading that book or whatever. You should be a little bit smarter than you were when you went in. And that's the goal. So it's all science all the time. Science as it pertains to the reptile hobby, because there's a lot of overlap. Yeah. Understanding what inbreeding depression is in wild populations and how that works and how that informs what you might do or not do in captivity, which is a totally different set of circumstances. And the rules are different. The science in the field and in academia can influence and affect how you view things and how you proceed with husbandry and what you choose to do. So it's that sort of interface of those two worlds, the academic side of things and the hobby side of things. And that's kind of the line we're going to try to straddle. So
that it's going to be great. I mean, I couldn't think of two better dudes to do exactly that. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah. Warren's got his work cut out for him, trying to keep me, even today, it's like, you can tell it's like trying to bring me back. He's rambling on. He's going off on a tangent. It's like, bring it back to snakes. Bring it back to snakes. You didn't say that, but you can kind of tell this is the first time I've been on podcasts with Warren, but we were always like both guests, kind of a thing. So it's like, this is like, we're on the same side now. We're like, oh, we're now. It's like, he's like, kind of, I think he's going to do good, kind of keeping me on track, because I'm horrible about just rambling on about.
Oh man. A full-time mutton wrangler. That sounds rough.
No, it wasn't too bad. It was like a couple of times. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I see what you did there. All right, but I need that. Otherwise, somebody's gonna say one thing, and I'm gonna be talking about quantum mechanics or something. Like, what? And I'm gonna be off in get lost in a tangent, as I'm prone to doing that. I mean, it's
tangent black hole.
It's relevant though. Everything's relevant to everything. That's the thing. That's what's so fascinating about the universe, is that like, oh, we're interested in snakes today. Well, snakes are a biological life form. Where did that, and it evolved from earlier things that weren't snakes. And where did those things evolve from? Earlier things still. And where did those first life forms evolve from? From things that weren't even alive, because inorganic things also evolve. Chemicals evolve. Inorganic compounds evolve. Particles evolve. The cosmos evolves. And the cosmic side of things, like the evolution of the cosmos and the inorganic, is what allows for the evolution and the origination of the organic, which ultimately leads, like, if you trace the family tree of a python behind me all the way back, you end up with at the Big Bang. It doesn't stop even at the origin of biology. It keeps going before that all the way to, because where did all the particles that make up all the atoms inside that snake come from? Oh, they were fused, but they're products of nuclear fusion in the heart of a dying star, first sequence star, that exploded and went supernova, 100 million years after the Big Bang. And that's where those particles came from that made up the exact same particles that make up these snakes. Everything is connected to everything. Yeah. And so it's very easy to get, kind of distracted, like your dog does it. If it sees a squirrel, it's like squirrel. The dog's doing this, like that's me. I just see it's super easy because I think personally I find all of these connections so fascinating. So.
All right, man. Well, oh shoot, you know what? There's stuff I wanted to get to, but we can get to it next time, buddy. I'm sure there will be a next time. I wanted to talk about the origin of the ivory. Was it just one animal that you saw, just and it stuck out that it was just more white, and then you just started breeding for that?
In my first ever clutch of jungles, there was it was a pretty muted, kind of a ugly jungle. But back in those days, in 1996, it wasn't even that, jungles weren't quite as refined back in those earlier days. There was one baby that was weird. It was really busy pattern, almost like a zebra, but it wasn't a zebra. And its color seemed off when it hatched. It was a small clutch of only 6 eggs. And there was this weird female, and it wouldn't eat, but it kept shedding. So it shed like 5 days after it hatched, which was weird. And then when the rest of its clutch hatched, it shed a second time. And it was obviously different looking, much paler. I struggled to get it to eat for a long, long, long time. I finally found a local pet shop had a litter of Russian dwarf hamsters. And I got a fuzzy Russian dwarf hamster, and that's what it ate, which was difficult to source. But I eventually got it going, and I raised it up. And and it turned white. It was white. It was bizarre and weirdly aberrantly patterned. I got pictures of it somewhere. And in my lineage chart, you can see a picture of it. And then Ryan Young talked me out of that snake. He got obsessed with it, and I can't remember what the deal was. I needed the money for something. I think it was when I bought my first Brettles pythons in 1999 or something. So a long time ago, and they were quite expensive. So Ryan obtained that snake for me, and then Ryan really, really, really pounded the earth, the four corners of the earth, to find a black and white male. And I got a couple of them that turned out to not be nearly so black and white. And one he actually was legit pretty white. He produced the very first clutch of white jungle to white jungle. He kept back a single pair. And then I think he bred them again. And basically, Ryan actually shepherded that project in that first, like the first two clutches of that project. And then I had no idea. Then ultimately, I got all that project back from him. And then it's been me since, the earliest 2000s, probably 2002-ish.
Jeez.
And now I think it's, 8-9 generations. But it started in the original animals that produced the first ivory that started it would have hatched in circa 1993, 1994. So well over 30 years ago. And it's just been continually refining it ever since.
Wow.
But it's a little different in that it's most of the time when you're selectively breeding for color, you're selectively breeding for more of a pigment. This is you're selectively breeding for the absence of any pigment. There is no such thing as white pigment. So what ultimately did was selectively bred a piebald snake. Piebaldism is just the lack of any pigment, and that's why it's white, because there's zero pigment. That's why it's white. So it's a selectively bred piebald jungle, basically. It's not that it's not that it has less yellow pigment. It says no pigment at all. It's black and nothing, and the nothing is visually white. Damn. So it's a little weird. Like making them yellow, you were selectively breeding for increased yellow pigment production, not no pigment production.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And all these generations later, still going.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. I didn't know that it started out with Ryan getting obsessed with it.
It was like me, then it was Ryan, and then it was been me for a long time. But I don't think you gotta give credit where credit's due. Everybody associates that project as being solely with me, but I don't think it would exist if it wasn't for Ryan. Ryan is an odd dude. If you ever talk to him, you probably know that. But he's probably
a bunch of snakes.
He's probably my best. He's probably my best friend. But I mean, I'll say that. I'll say that too. I tell him that all the time. He gets. I don't know if obsession is the right word, but he gets really freaking determined at times. Like he will dig deep to find answers to questions. He will dig he will go all in to find a thing, or he will pound the pavement. He will call 100 random ass people that he heard used to have some type of whatever. He will track it down. He is like a bloodhound. He found if I had kept that snake, I don't think I would have been as diligent about trying to find the male that he ultimately found. And so while ivory jungles probably would have existed, it wouldn't have necessarily been as successful a project, because I probably would have just been cheap and just tried to do it all in-house with the one female and breeding back its own offspring. Whereas he found a legit, and it really locked it in pretty early. I don't think project would have been as successful without Ryan in those early first few clutches really getting it off the ground.
Wow.
So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I used to have a whole section on my website that detailed this whole story and everything in earlier versions of my website. I think I still have it somewhere because all my old websites still exist on a hard drive somewhere. But,
so we did talk about, I asked you a few times, how long, when can you breed this, so on and so forth. And you're like, well, you could breed them at this age, but when should you breed these animals to be as ethical as possible? If I want a really long-lived, like my spotteds I got from Ryan, my jungle I got from you, if I want them to live a long, healthy life, but I also want to reproduce them to add that layer of complexity to my keeping and my husbandry and having that experience, when should I reproduce them?
I think there is a sweet spot. I think in my experience, sometimes you have animals that are quite old and never got bred ever, and then you try to breed them and it doesn't really go well. I've seen that. I've had females die. I've had 3 females die in 3 different species, and in all cases they were somebody's pet that had never intended on breeding them. They had a lone female, whatever, and it was a pet, and it had gotten very large and was quite old and very large, and then you bred them for the first time ever. They ovulated and released so many follicles all at once that they hemorrhaged internally and bled out and died internally.
Jeez.
I've had that happen with a carpet python, an Amazon tree boa, and a ball python. All 3 the same. They were big, giant females that they were over a decade old, and no one had ever tried to breed them. So I wouldn't wait that long. Obviously, too young, too small is problematic. I would say you'd want to try in that first 4 or 5 years, seems to be 4 years. You're not going to hurt anything. Okay. 4 years, you don't have to feed them that aggressively. 4 years, they'll be up to size.
Yeah.
And I've had the same problem with males, where I have, for genetic diversity reasons, with animals that you have a very shallow gene pool in. The older animals are more genetically diverse, and every subsequent filial generation you get removed from the wild out ancestor, you get less and less genetic diversity and greater homozygosity, more inbreeding. So the older the animal is, the more genetic diversity is closer to the source. It maintains at least a few more alleles here and there and gene variants that are not represented in their downstream offspring. So, for example, the Brisbane coastals, they're all descended of a single pair of snakes 40 years ago.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, 40 years ago. My original females are 2 of them are still alive, and they are 17 years old. Wow. And they are the direct offspring of the original pair that were 1 million years old when they were retired breeders. And then I talked Paul into bringing them out of retirement to breed them again so I could get some. And he did. And it was a disaster, but I did get them.
Wow.
So I bred my original male for as long as I could. I held back a male out of my very first clutch. He did not get a chance to breed until he was 11 years old.
Jeez.
Because the original male would be more genetically diverse than his offspring would be. So I wanted to breed the original male until I basically bred him until the wheels fell off. And he got old and circled the drain and slowly over the course of a year crashed and died. And then it's like, all right, you're up. It's what you've been training for your whole life. It's up. That damn thing hasn't done squat in 5 years. Hasn't sired a single clutch. I've only seen 1 lock ever in 5 years after all that waiting. Affor's line Brettles, same thing. They're even older. My original animals were from 2007, so almost 20. And the original male kept breeding him. I held back a male from my very first clutch in 2010 or whatever. My holdback male he's 14 years old now.
Wow.
And he has never done anything. He, again, sat there without ever seeing a female for a decade, ready to go in case I needed him. The original male finally dies. All right, you're up. He hasn't done a damned thing.
Wow.
Nothing. I've given up. I literally bought a pair of Affor's Brettles from a friend of mine, Roy Stewart, who you know.
Oh, yeah.
Roy got babies from my first clutches. So I got babies from his clutch to raise up because male's never going to breed at this point. He's like, what are you doing? I think you can wait too long. So 4 to 5 and get busy with it.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to get, I think, a female from Roy, and I feel like I should have because I really like the Affor's line. Brettles, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Very, very dark.
And Roy's a really good dude to get snakes from, so.
He is. He's only like 40 minutes away from me.
Yeah, great. I need to get down there. I've known Roy for probably 20 years. I don't even know what Roy looks like. I don't even know. I've never, all these years I've talked to this dude, he's bought a bunch of snakes from me. Now I've got a bunch of snakes, a handful of snakes from him over the years now. Yeah. And I've never been in the same room with a guy. But, yeah, no, it's I should get down there.
You got to come to Florida, man.
It wasn't for all the Floridians. Like, it's like,
hey,
okay, there's at least like 2 cool people in Florida.
Yeah.
A couple. But
there's me and there's Roy, and I have a family and he has a family. That's like at least 10 people right there.
Right, at least 10 out of the state of like, 27 million people in Florida, I think.
Dr. Stephen Tillis is doing great things with viruses and all, you know?
I've met Stephen twice in person, but only briefly. He seemed like a nice guy. I've met, just a couple times. I never really talked to him much, but I have been in the same room with him and met him a couple times.
Anybody that's willing to devote
before he was
lives...
Dr. Stephen Tillis.
Oh wow, pre-doctor. Yeah, now he's
way pre-doctor. Like, oh my god, like, it was.
He was just a young man.
Yeah, he was. He was with Eugene Bissett.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And he accompanied Eugene Bissett up to the. There was a boreal snake symposium in Maryland that I was a speaker at, and they were up for that.
Nice.
And Eugene's always a kick in the pants.
I don't know what that means.
He's like simultaneously completely crazy, but I just love the dude. Like he's nuts, I think, but he's like, I hope that when I am his age that I still have that same passion for this that he does. Like you could just tell he is just like, it's in his blood. Like, and he just oozes this herpetocultural aura. Like and you can just tell like he's not bored with it. It's like he's still as into it and passionate about it as he ever was. And I think that's what we should all strive for, to have that kind of passion for what we do. And even into old age, still got it. I'm like, that's what I want.
Hell yeah, man. On that note, we'll wrap it up, man. I appreciate you coming on, dude.
Every time, anytime. It's good talking to you.